All right, perfect. All right. What's up, everybody? I appreciate everybody stopping by here on this Friday night. We're doing a live draft, first round mock draft live stream with five other amazing content creators. I'm just gonna go through, have everybody introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about your channel so that people can know. All experts on a team, essentially, all do great stuff. Checked out. I went through their channels. I made sure we don't have any crazies in here or anything like that. It's all great content for everybody. So, Joseph, why don't you start us off?
Yeah, I'm Joseph Camo. I have a channel called The Cardinal Rule, and as the name would suggest, I do Arizona Cardinals content. I've been a fan of the team since they moved to Arizona because I am that old, and had been doing this thing for a couple of years. And if you like Arizona Cardinals stuff or like the NFL and you just want to kind of get some analysis of the Cardinals, definitely check out my channel.
All right, Dan.
Coming at you with Dan Thornton from Lions Talk Live. We break down all the videos. Why did the plays work? Why didn't they work? We try to do pregame and postgame analysis of all the Detroit Lions plays. Let's keep you updated throughout the season. So if you want to break down why perhaps the TJ Hockenson trade worked for one team and well, maybe not as well for the other team because we didn't get as many draft picks as I would have liked. Whatever it may be, tune into Lions Talk Live and check out all of our content.
All right, excellent. I enjoyed that trade. All right, Daniel, tell us about your Steelers.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Daniel J. I'm from State of the Steelers. I also talk, obviously, Steeler football, news and coverage. I also cover the Steelers on another channel called Steel Curtain Network, formerly known as Behind the Steel Curtain. So if you're interested in our coverage, just check out State of the Steelers. I'm on there usually about 3-4 times a week. Once the season kicks off, I'm there almost every day on Steel Curtain Network. I'm there on Mondays on a show called The Steelers Hangover.
All right, awesome. And Stevie B, our fantasy football guy in the room. So you're a professional at drafting.
Dynasty, yes. Mostly offense. I play in a couple different IDP leagues, but yeah, we're live. I mean, 3 nights a week answering questions, whether you're a beginner or an expert, just everything Dynasty fantasy football related.
All right, perfect. And the last man, the man himself, Tigo, talking about his Jets.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm talking Jets with Tigo. I do a lot of Jets coverage. Obviously, it's in the name, and you know, I try to do a lot of content that isn't just 100% Jets focused. I'd say that like 90% of what I do is Jets focused because I am a Jets fan. But the NFL has 32 teams. There's 32 really interesting stories always going on. So if there's a big story going on, I tend to talk about that too. But yeah, no, mainly Jets.
I feel your pain. The Jets are my AFC team, and most of my family is Jet fans, so I can relate to the pain of the Jets. But let's get into it, boys. So, for those of you just stopping by, don't necessarily know what we're doing. We're going to be running through a first round mock draft. Everybody here got 5 or 6 teams, 5 or 6 picks. To go through. We're playing like we're the GMs, and we're just going to run through this thing like we can possibly expect to see next Thursday night through the first round. We have trades available open if a team wants to trade up or somebody's okay with moving back. We're all for it because we know trades are coming. It's hard to predict where the trades are going to be, but we just gotta kind of wing it. You see a lot of mocks with trades, so let's get into it. I think Daniel, you have the first pick, I believe, with the Carolina Panthers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So Carolina has not made it a surprise or a secret that they're in the quarterback race. There's 2 top quarterbacks in this draft that they're probably aiming for: Bryce Young out of Alabama and C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State. If I was Carolina Panthers GM, I would be selecting C.J. Stroud based on his size. He's a little bit bigger, probably a little bit more durable for the NFL game versus Bryce Young. So that's going to be the pick, number 1 overall, C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State.
All right, C.J. Stroud, Ohio State. Not scared a little bit by the low cognition score he had today, are you?
Not at all.
No. All right. I like, anybody got anything on CJ they want to say?
I think
No.
the quarterback, if I had to pick, if I was at number 1, given their situation in Carolina, he seems to fit a lot of what Frank Reich likes to do and what he wants out of a quarterback. Bryce Young, I think we all agree, has got a lot more immediate impact. But I think Stroud, with his ability to scramble like he showed against Georgia, his accuracy has improved. Deep balls there, his ability to read defenses, it's got to improve. But what NFL rookie doesn't have that problem? I think the kid's got a lot of upside.
I'd just like to add, right now, obviously it's smokescreen season, so it's hard to know what to believe. But there is a widespread belief that Bryce Young's going to be the first pick. So it's interesting. We had a little bit of a zig here from at least what we're hearing in the media. And who knows, right? They have not made, they have not made it public. With the first overall pick, you can actually kind of announce that ahead of time if you've already agreed to that. So it's right off the bat, it seems like we've got a little bit of an interesting kind of zig and zag here.
Yeah.
I
Go
think
ahead.
this definitely is like smoke season though, because when they came up, CJ was the betting favorite. Like it was immediately they came up for CJ Stroud, and I'm not sure what changed from before to now. Bryce Young didn't magically put on 30 pounds. He didn't magically grow 2 inches, and those are the biggest concerns, right? Like we've seen short quarterbacks work. You should know more than anything, Joseph, like with Kyler
Right.
Murray and all that stuff, relatively work, right? But it's still one of those things where this should be the pick. I believe that Frank Reich and that staff are incredibly intelligent, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to trust my franchise to a guy who's that slim. I don't care about his height. I care about his weight. Like as a Jets fan, I saw Matt Milano running up free, up the middle, unblocked, and fold 6'4", 220-pound Mike White and crack 3 ribs. He's got 6 inches and 40 pounds on Bryce Young. What happens when Matt Milano comes streaking up the middle and hits that guy? Is his career just over? Like that's my biggest concern. I think this absolutely should be the pick at 1.
So I will stand for Bryce right here. For this. So I get it. I was all on it's really hard to give up the assets they gave up to move up to go draft Bryce Young number 1. And this is a big pick for Frank. He's had quarterback problems, as we all know. It got him run out of Indy. I love Bryce Young. I'm a big believer in the intangibles of quarterbacks that takes you over the top. And Bryce Young is Mr. Intangible. If you watched him play at Alabama, these were not the Alabama receiving corps that Alabama's put out in the past. They were not as good. We think about, Bama receivers. There's 6 guys going out in the first round. He did not have those weapons, and he made every single play to try and win every single game for that team. He's best. I think back to 2 years ago in the Iron Bowl when they were down, their playoff spot was dwindling away, and he drove the field at Auburn to go get the touchdown. So I'm a big Bryce Young stan. I get he's small. I get it could be a problem that he could get hurt, but we pay big guys to protect him. But I get the pick here. But this does throw a wrench in the draft, like you said.
I'm with you on Bryce. I do like Bryce better. I think CJ fits what Frank likes to do better. Typically that prototype quarterback with the size. But that cognitive test, that's a big thing. And now he failed that miserably. And that kind of goes to show, under pressure last year, he only had a 41% completion percentage, 42% PFF grade under pressure. So that kind of comes hand in hand, when you think about it. So that's the one thing that a little bit worries me about Stroud. I still like him, but I think I like Bryce better at the number 1 pick.
Yeah, that's a great point. High scores don't indicate a successful quarterback, but low scores tend to indicate maybe a struggling quarterback. But I'm on the clock at number 2 now with Houston, and this actually throws a wrench in my pick because I was for sure going Will Anderson here with with Bryce Young going number 1. Houston is not in love with CJ Stroud whatsoever. Now, it could be a lot of smoke screens, but I think it's a smart move for DeMeco Ryan to also buy himself extra years to help build his roster because you're not going to get fired by not having a quarterback yet. So he can draft the best defensive player he feels like to help his defense out. Maybe they go Tyree Wilson. He's flying up a lot of boards. They're bad again next year, and they get one of those top quarterbacks because it seems like he's going to have a few years to rebuild this roster. So, but if Bryce Young's sitting here at number 2, I got to go Bryce Young. I think he fits that offense perfectly. They run the San Francisco offense. You don't get hit. You don't got to make too many complicated throws. Great on the play action. So I got to go Bryce Young here. I think we've said what we need to say on these quarterbacks now. So let's take it over to Joseph at number 3. And we have a trade.
Yes. So, the Arizona Cardinals, I think it's the worst kept secret in the NFL that they plan to trade out of 3 if they absolutely can. I think they will probably have multiple offers, regardless of how the second round or the second overall pick plays out. Whether it's Will Anderson or a quarterback as has gone here, I still think there's going to be teams that want to get up there, get ahead of the Colts, and not get left out in the cold with those top 4 quarterbacks. So the Raiders have traded up with the Cardinals, and at 3rd overall, we're going to go with Anthony Richardson. I think they trade up to get the guy who is maybe a little bit unpolished in some ways, but has those physical tools that if you believe you can develop him, the upside is crazy high. There's risk with that kind of prospect. But with quarterbacks in recent years, really where it's gone from looking for NFL ready quarterbacks to quarterbacks who are toolsy and coachable. And that's kind of how you develop those elite quarterbacks like Josh Allen. So I think the Raiders go up and try to get one of those guys.
Anybody got anything on Richardson?
Joseph, I agree with you. I think there's a more and more going back to almost like an 80s trend in the NFL, where back then in the 70s, 80s, most quarterbacks were drafted. They spent a year or two basically tutoring, learning the system behind a veteran, and then coming into a starting spot. Anthony Richardson, AR-15, I think we all get he's got the athleticism, he's got the traits, he's got everything you and I and no coach can teach. But what he lacks is just game experience. He had whatever it was this past season in college, 13 games or whatever it was. So this kid's going to have to learn for a year or two how to read, how to react, how to manage the game. If he can do that behind Garoppolo for a couple of years, I think you got the opportunity to really have something great return and value with this kid, because again, he's got the stuff nobody can teach. Now, can you teach him for 2 years and get him ready?
I agree with Anthony Richardson going to the Raiders. That seems like a Raiders type of pick. Go with a player with a lot of talent, all the intangibles. It feels like this is possibly the way they're going to go. Losing Derek Carr, they need a quarterback. Anthony Richardson, I think if he's available, he's probably going to go with the Raiders. Or the Raiders are going to select him.
Now,
This pick hurts me.
Oh, that
Pick
pick
hurts me.
hurts.
Yeah, because I love Anthony Richardson, and I have zero faith in McDaniel. Like less than zero faith in him. This is what his 3rd franchise that he's blowing up in how many years? And I wanted Anthony Richardson to go to a franchise that knows what they're doing. I wanted him to go to a situation that's actually going to take care of him, because the unfortunate truth is that we're going to see Anthony Richardson starting this year, probably week 5, after Jimmy G gets another injury from God knows what, probably stepped on a ladybug and twisted his knee or something stupid. And it's just, this makes a ton of sense, right? Because Jimmy G's contract is a glorified 2-year contract, and Anthony Richardson needs 2 years, but Jimmy G's not going to last 5 games. So then you're going to give McDaniels, who should have been fired, this kid who's an insanely high talent. He's not going to use him well. It hurts my heart, man.
Yeah.
I get it. The only hesitation I would have here is he going to dip back into the Tim Tebow pool right now, because that was his thing. That's what he sold his lot on. And Anthony Richardson is a very similar type guy. Obviously, way more athletic, way more possibilities, but man, can't complete a pass to save his life in college. Kind of like another Florida quarterback. But hey, maybe he did win a playoff game with Tebow. Maybe he's about this kind of stuff, these kind of moves.
Yeah, they came at our expense.
It happens, you can't, oh no, one playoff tragedy for all those Super Bowl rings. I can live with that. All right, next up, the Colts. Stevie B, what do you got for us?
The Colts, yeah. I mean, it's tough. I figured it's possible 3 quarterbacks went before me, but I don't see how we can just go in with only Minshew. So I think I got to take Levis. It's just rough with just Minshew there. And I don't even love the pick, but I almost have to.
I mean, he's probably the guy that least amount of people love in these top 4 quarterbacks. But I think you're right. Whether you or I like him or not, and, you know, my friend Aaron Van Buren says no one wants Mr. Mayo in his coffee, right? But I think you're right that that's probably going to be the pick. That like that's everyone is talking about that they like him, and we may not like the pick, but it just seems like that's probably the most accurate pick you could make there.
Yeah.
Steichen is sold as this quarterback guru, right? And if you look at his track record, and I think even if, let's say, Bryce Young goes 1 and we don't see quarterbacks at 2 or 3, I still think Will Levis is the pick here at 4. When you look at a guy who has all of those skills and has that skill set, like if anyone's going to make Will Levis work at the next level, I think it's going to be Steichen. And don't forget, Indianapolis has a really, really good run game that they can piggyback off of that offensive line. They still have Jonathan Taylor there, so they don't need to ask Will Levis to do all the things that he was asked to do in Kentucky. He doesn't have to win with his arm. He doesn't have to run for his life because they literally don't have anyone on that team that matters outside of Will Levis at Kentucky, unfortunately. So I really like this pick. This pick, I think, happens no matter what happens 1 to 3.
I agree with that.
Let me ask you a quick question. Sorry. I just to get everyone's opinion with what's going on with Stroud. Let's say Houston does go Will Anderson number 2. Which quarterback do we think falls? Do we think it's Stroud or Richardson past 4?
I think Stroud makes it to 11.
Okay.
It depends, honestly. I would have said a week ago if somebody traded up to 3 and they drafted Anthony Richardson, my jaw would have hit the floor instead of CJ Stroud. I will be a little less surprised, but I still think someone's going up to get CJ Stroud at 3 if he's there rather than Anthony Richardson.
It's interesting. I think 3 becomes less of a priority if the Texans take Will Anderson. Like if you're looking at it and you're a CJ Stroud guy and every report that you've ever heard is that the Colts are in on Will Levis and that's their guy, now Seattle becomes where the draft starts because you don't have to trade the assets to go up to 3. 3 is way more expensive than 5.
Seattle's for sure going with Anthony Richardson if he's on the board. I have inside sources on that one. Anthony Richardson's for sure.
Too.
Yeah.
I think so too. But again, then what? The draft starts at 6? So it's much cheaper to trade up to 6 to go get CJ Stroud than it is there. But if you're the Lions, and Dan, this is going to be a great conversation point after I make my pick here, is going to be, you know, is there a trade that you would look at? Like, you guys shouldn't be picking at 6 anytime soon. The Lions are on the come up. So do you just take advantage of the fact that, like, dude, Will Anderson is still here. Jalen Carter is still here. Like, these are guys that are touted as generational guys. Are you really going to move back when your team has needs at those positions? It's an interesting conversation to have, specifically if Houston doesn't go quarterback at 2.
Absolutely.
Well, I'll say this. I think the chances of Houston not taking a quarterback, I think, are pretty slim. That's just my opinion. I think a lot of this is just smoke screen, you know, days before the draft. See if they can draw up some interest. If they got hit with something, you know, for an offer that they just couldn't turn down, I think they would probably take it, especially since they have the second first-round pick and would be able to go up and get somebody else if they wanted to. But with that being said, when it comes to Detroit, I don't think it's as crystal clear what they're going to do. I think there's a real possibility you could see the Lions trade out of 6 and drop to maybe 16 or 11, those 2 spots in particular.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, could the Lions even go quarterback if the quarterback's on the board? Are they really sold, like, we have a squad, Jared Goff can get it done for us?
I like Goff. I mean, what he did last year, I mean, you know, what he did
only at home.
St. Brown and
only at home.
and going forward, it's like, I don't know, he was a top 10 fantasy QB last year. I know that's not, you know, real life, but threw almost 29 touchdowns if I'm not mistaken. I mean, do you want to, you know, break that up? The offense was on the come up. They won a bunch of games towards the end of the year. You know, do you want to move on from Jared Goff? Just a question mark.
Well, I'll throw some information at it. So when he first came to Detroit, obviously it's a complete tear down, rebuild. You know, most of the receivers he's throwing to his first year in Detroit are, I guess the polite way to put it would be, for the most part, they're 3rd, 4th, or 5th stringers. So they're not really able to run a lot of, you know, separation routes. They're not really able to get complicated with the offense. The original OC during Goff's first year in Detroit just for whatever reason, it wasn't clicking. So when Campbell takes over and promotes Ben Johnson during the final 6 games of the 2021 season, Goff's actually the number 4 quarterback in all the league just during that time frame. Now you can compound that with what he did last year. I don't think Goff's the problem by any means, but the real question would be if a premier quarterback is there, here would be the thing I would have to face if I was the Detroit Lions GM. Goff's got 2 seasons left, and after that, he's going to get somewhere, 40 to 50 million, we'll say, by today's standards. If I take a rookie and I've got the 5th-year option, that means I got 3 years of cheap quarterback play that I can now reinvest into these great draft classes I've had the prior 2 seasons to keep a lot of talent around, and then push off having to make a financial decision at the QB spot for another 3 years.
I've got this just theory, and it's just my little theory here about Goff and the Lions. I'd love to hear your take on it, Dan, as someone who covers, follows Lions closely. There's part of me that just thinks they see him as their guy because he's a little bit of an underdog at this point. This kind of guy who's viewed as almost a bust, but not quite. They traded for him. People outside of Detroit thought it was just an afterthought, but they saw him as their starter. He buys into the culture there, and they see him as a guy who's a good fit for the culture. And maybe they stick with him as that underdog. He's our guy. What do you think about that?
I would say this. The story of his, I guess you could say, resurrection in Detroit, it's great, but at some point, it's got to just be that, a story. Do you believe this guy is able to win you meaningful games, playoff games, and take your team to where you ultimately want to go, and that's the Super Bowl? Yes, he did it with LA. Yes, they ran into Tom Brady, and unfortunately, Tom Brady and the New England pound machine at that point won that game. But I will say this for Goff. He's got a lot of good qualities about him. I don't think he has many great or exceptional qualities. If I had to rank him in the NFL, I would say he's about above average. So that means he's somewhere between, on a bad day, he's probably the 14th best quarterback, 17th best quarterback in the NFL. On a good day, he's probably 8 to 6. He's never going to be elite, but he's never going to be terrible. So if I'm Brad Holmes, again, the financial point that you've got to make in a year or two, a decision, one of these quarterbacks comes to you. Have they impressed you enough to where you think you can go from being, average to slightly above average to potentially great? And if you don't think you can get great out of one of these guys, there's no chance they're getting rid of Goff then.
That makes a lot of sense. Now maybe we did see it. Now granted, Green Bay was kind of trash last year. He went up and he made a couple of big throws in that Sunday night game when they didn't really, they weren't playing for anything, and he won that game just to kind of prove a point. So maybe Goff has taken that next step where he can win some playoff games and not be carried by McVay. But I think you're right. It's a very interesting spot, and everybody's rooting for the underdog Detroit Lions. Even me, who's a Vikings fan, would not be devastated if Detroit got to a Super Bowl. It's not like Chicago or Green Bay. But let's move on to Seattle. This is now kind of an interesting spot. No quarterbacks left. Tigo, you're on the board for Mr. Pete Carroll.
I really, really wanted to get really weird with the number 5 pick, and I have a lot of interesting thoughts here. But the problem is Jalen Carter is still on the board. I was really hoping that the Texans didn't go quarterback, that the Cardinals didn't go quarterback, that I was really hoping that Jalen Carter was gone, because now I can get really creative here with the number 5 pick. But with the best player in this year's draft still on the board here at 5, Pete Carroll, this, you sprint to the podium, right? You don't even let the timer, the moment goes Seattle is on the clock, it should switch to the pick is in. You sprint to go get Jalen Carter, and then if there's any franchise in the NFL that has built up enough goodwill from GM to head coach to locker room that can handle a guy who might have character concerns like Jalen Carter, Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks absolutely can handle that kind of personality. Look at what they've been hiding with, apparently, with Russell Wilson for years and all of those things. So yeah, Jalen Carter, welcome to the Seattle Seahawks.
I agree with you. This feels like a Pete Carroll pick. I had him in my mock right before free agency. I said Jalen Carter falls to Pete Carroll. This is a Pete Carroll pick. I think Tyree Wilson is a very kind of off the board kind of guy that could be the pick here for them. They go a little creative. I like your mindset with that because they do kind of come out of left field with their
I
first
was gonna
round
go even
picks.
farther out of left field. It was
You're
gonna be weird. I was gonna take Peter Skoronsky. If Jalen Carter was gone, I was gonna take Skoronsky.
Interesting. Well, my friend Aaron Van Buren in the chat is a trainer, and he actually worked, or I think interned at Northwestern. So he is a huge Skoronsky fan. So you just made him happy.
I love the kid, and can you imagine him on that offensive line in Seattle? Like
Do
just
you-
protecting Geno into doing all those stuff. They're gonna take an offense like they draft via the draft, like through the trenches. They take the big uglies constantly, and then you bring him in and you put him in at left guard immediately. That's one of the better O lines in all of football, including the fact that they got 2 tackles last year.
Yeah. And yeah, you can plug and play, and you essentially have 3 tackles there. God, imagine Skoronsky pulling around the middle as a guard.
That's what I'm saying. Get into
Or-
the second
or
level and just
cross.
laying out a safety.
Especially in that division. Did everybody like Jalen Carter? We worried. I know he's settled on his things. Is that a character issue about the accident at Georgia? Anybody's got concerns about?
I mean, the Cardinals need defensive interior line help, and I haven't heard that they've done a meeting with him, and so I suspect he's off their board. And the general manager and coach have come in talking about how they want to build character and culture. And I know everyone says that, but I think with a new regime there, drafting a guy with those big question marks that early is kind of a bad look with all the things they've been saying. So I just, for multiple reasons, think the Cardinals, if he were still on the board at 7, I think they might still pass on him.
Yeah, when it comes to Jalen Carter, I think there are some character issues there that have taken him off of some of the draft boards. Also the fact that he didn't want to meet with anybody that was outside of the top 10. Drew Rosenhaus had mentioned that he had spoken to a couple of teams that were outside of the top 10, and none of them were willing to move up to get him either. And so, that could be a smokescreen on its own. However, I think he's probably going to fall, but he's not going to fall out of the top 10 either. I think this is a good spot for him.
I like the kid. If he was there at 6, if it was before today in Detroit, I think the Lions would have strongly pushed for him. But unfortunately, with the news of Jameson Williams, among other players, I just don't think he can risk the locker room having that much questionable decision makers potentially around. So, Campbell, Holmes have done a brilliant job in 2 years of resurrecting the Lions franchise that's been down for 30 years. So I think it's a great pick for Seattle. I think they've got the levity to be able to take somebody like that and bring them along. I wish today wouldn't have happened, because if he was at 6, I'd want the Lions to take him, but it is what it is. Seattle's going to remove that option from us.
Okay. Oh, well, you are here at 6 now, Dan. Let's see what you're gonna move on after today's news. A couple guys suspended, particularly in the wide receiver room. What do the Lions do here at 6? They do have 2 first-round picks, which is nice.
I don't think it's really going to affect them at 6, but it could affect their decision making in the latter part of the first round, either at 18 or potentially a trade up, depending on how the board falls. I don't think, based on what we know of what Detroit wants to do with defense, they're going to take, in this scenario, Will Anderson Jr. You pair him with Houston, Hutchinson, among others. That's just a lot of heat that they can bring off the edges and up the middle with some of their NASCAR packages. You're going to have to be able to contain Justin Fields for the foreseeable future. You're going to have to deal with Jalen Hurst. So any mobile quarterback, with the addition of someone like Anderson Jr., along with who they got last year and the year prior, they've got an incredible amount of ability to be able to put blitz packages out there and pressure on even the most mobile of quarterbacks. Anderson Jr. does not have any red flags about him. He seems to interview incredibly well. He seems to perform well. Yes, I get he had some issues last year with some more premier offensive tackles. But every player is going to need to continue to improve. And I think, based on what we've seen from the Detroit Lions coaching staff and their ability to develop even late round talent, you got to believe Anderson Jr. is going to be able to come in and make an impact right away.
I'm terrified now. I mean, that's a monster pass rush they're rolling out there with 3 elite guys that can go get after the quarterbacks, and they can draw it up however they want. I think you have to go Anderson if he's here on the board. They did a good job addressing the secondary kind of needs. I wouldn't hate going secondary here, obviously, because they got to cover some dudes in the NFC North. There are some guys out there that can fly and can get open, but yeah, I mean, Will Anderson's number one defensive player on some people's boards, so
I was
I get
actually
that
going to
pick.
ask that, like, because you brought it
Mhm.
up, Pete, and I think it's a great question. I was going to ask Dan is like, how when you're comparing, right, like the guys that are in that tier 1 bucket that the Lions might take, how do guys like Christian Gonzalez and Devin Witherspoon in your eyes match up to a guy like Will Anderson? Because like on my board, Will Anderson's not even the number 1 edge on my board, but Devin Witherspoon is like by far and away the best corner. And with like the Jeff Okuda trade and stuff like that, and possibly being able to get a guy, you know, at 18 in the draft, how do you, like, you personally and being in like that space, what are you hearing from Detroit in that sense of how they might compare a guy like Will Anderson to a Devin Witherspoon or even a Christian Gonzalez, who I think are premier players in this draft?
Well, I think Anderson Jr. So with all the guys in the draft, this is just my opinion. I think you've got about five what I would say are elite players, and regardless of the positions, they're just above everybody else. Once you get past that, I think you've got about another 8 to 12, maybe 13 players that aren't that dissimilar if you were going to rate them. So while I agree with you, I think Witherspoon is an elite corner. I just think the drop off from him to say number 2 to 5 isn't horribly different. Anderson Jr., in my opinion, he is almost a twin of James Houston. I don't see when I watch them, they're bend at the ankles, their ability to contort and drop shoulders, use their arms to get off blockers. I think they're twins in almost every aspect of the world. Now, the fact that Detroit does not have great linebackers, you're going to put both of these guys at linebackers, and they're going to go into coverage sometimes, sure. But that's just an incredible, difficult task for any offensive coordinator to be able to say, hey, who am I going to double team block? Which one of those two? Or do I have to double team block Aiden Hutchinson, Romeo Quara, who came back from an Achilles injury last year, Charles Harris, who was out almost all the year? You're going to be able to put a ton of pressure anytime somebody gets to second or third and long. That, man, I just feel sorry for people having to guard them. You can only leave so many guys in the block without sending nobody out on routes. And that's going to be the problem, I think, for most offenses that Detroit will face.
Yeah, especially the offensive lines in the division, not great, especially in the interior. So Will Anderson coming in hot from the middle there would be a problem. I know Minnesota, we have zero interior offensive line. Green Bay kind of struggling with that. In Chicago, they don't have anybody on their football team at this point. It feels like. So yeah, that's a disastrous pick. All right, now it's 7. Joseph, you Cardinals are on the clock here at 7.
Okay, so there's a couple different directions, that we could consider here, taking into account team needs, who the team has reportedly met with. They've met with Witherspoon. They've met with Tyree Wilson. They've met with a bunch of tackles, like a lot of tackles, though most of them are guys you expect to go mid to late first round. I think they're anticipating the potential of a further trade back when they're looking at those tackles. So do you go cornerback? Do you go edge? Well, those are both very deep positions in this draft class. So, normally you'd say, well, if I have these two positions, they're kind of a comparable player. Let's say Witherspoon and Wilson. Do you look at which position is deeper and then defer to the other? But they're both deep, right? I think, though, in this scenario, if this is what they're presented with, I think Cardinals look to go with Tyree Wilson. I think they maybe don't necessarily even expect him to still be there. I think he's a good fit for what Seattle likes to do. I know, Tio, you were talking about Seattle, just the crazy stuff they do, and it wouldn't shock me if they took him. But with obviously Jalen Carter's where you went, which makes a lot of sense too. But I think the Cardinals overall are happy to see Wilson still there, and they run to the podium and take him.
Great pick.
Yeah, I read this week some people have him as their number 1 edge rusher. He's flying up the boards. Kind of you got him up there kind of not so quietly, maybe a little quietly. which is interesting because we've seen a lot of defensive guys from Tech just really not do anything that have been first round picks that have kind of struggled a little bit. But I mean, hey, if they pass the football a ton in the Big 12, so you got a lot of pass rushing reps on you to go get after a quarterback here. So I think you're right. Do they go Jalen Carter if he's sitting here, which could be another spot, another guy who's possibly here? No, you're not thinking so because of the um issues possibly. So that would put them in a real tough spot if Carter's sitting there and kind of.
It wouldn't shock me if they traded back again, though.
Yeah.
In fact, I will say if they traded back a few more spots, I think a guy they really might like is Nolan Smith because he's been compared to Hassan Reddick, and Jonathan Gannon, our coach, comes from Philly. And on top of that, Nolan Smith has been recognized as having this elite character. And if they're wanting to bring a culture and a leadership, having a guy who they know how he fits in that role based on coming from having a similar guy in Philadelphia, plus a guy who they think can help be a leader in a locker room with a lot of young players they're going to be bringing in. This is year one of a kind of a turnover. I could see them trading back a little further and targeting Nolan Smith.
That makes sense.
Cardinals. Oh, I'm sorry. I was like,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you see that? Because the Cardinals, up until obviously Gannon got there, like they ran a 3-4 defense, and then Gannon runs a 4-3, right? That's what he ran in Philly. Have you heard anything? Because this is something that's been really interested that I've been really interested in is what scheme is expected out of defensively out of Arizona, because like your whole defense, like right now, when you look at the players, is built around this 3-4. And if Gannon is coming in, transitioning into a 4-3, one, I think Tyree Wilson is a great pick, but like, because that would be interesting. Because I think even at 7, Nolan Smith would be an excellent pick here at 7. I don't know if Nolan Smith during the draft actually escapes the top 10 because he's, what's his player comp? Micah Parsons. They're the same size, same speed, same weight, all of that stuff. And if you can add Micah Parsons to your team, that's awesome. Especially if you run a 3-4. So have you heard anything out of Gannon and out of the Arizona camp on what defensive scheme they're running?
Yeah, so what Jonathan Gannon has said right from the beginning is he says we don't run a scheme, but what he says they do, I know a lot of people say that, but what he says they do is they look at what their players do well, and then they look at what the opponent does, and they create sort of a game plan for that. So really sort of a hybrid multiple fronts that is rooted in the 4-3, but as we know, nickel is kind of the base defense these days in most teams. So, it's probably going to be more of that. And, I actually asked this question to Brett Coleman. I was fortunate to get, had an interview with him, and he talked about like, well, Fangio really kind of had a lot of influence on what they did in Philly, and they might not necessarily mirror that exactly. But he thought they needed to, they were going to run a lot of quarters, with some press outside corners, but kind of that whole bend but don't break shift that the league has gone towards. So I think what they're going to want though are some versatile defensive linemen, probably some guys that can play outside when they're in those 4-3 bases, maybe a little bigger, and then kick into the 3 technique. Some or at the defensive interior when they go nickel. So for me, what I think based on everything I've heard is they're going to want defensive pass rushers and defensive linemen and edge rushers that are versatile and can they can see a couple different spots they could fit. I think with Wilson, they see him as the guy they can put on the outside on those 4-3 sets, a little bit bigger kind of defensive and edge rusher. And then when they go to more nickel, maybe they slide him into the 3 technique a little bit. And if Nolan Smith is there, then maybe he plays a little bit more that, like you're talking about, like Parsons, a little bit Sam, a little bit outside, smaller pass rusher. So the short answer is I think they'll find a way to make it work with either one of them. Right.
Yeah. That's interesting. Cause that's been Arizona has been sneakily my most, like the team I'm most interested in this offseason because they're the biggest question mark. Because like, what are you going to do with Kyler? Yeah. What is Gannon as a head coach, right? Because we heard a lot of weird stories coming out from Gannon, and like Philly's defense was number 1 in the league last year, and there's a lot of, I don't know. I'm just really interested to see like at the end of the year, I want to meet up and talk because like I want to know what happened in Arizona because I'm super interested. I'm super interested in what's going out there in the desert. Honestly,
so are we. I mean, it's so much because I think they're gonna have a lot of draft picks. I think they're gonna trade back. If they trade Hopkins, they'll have more. Like, there's gonna be a very different looking roster, come season time than what we're looking at right now. So it's definitely going to be very interesting to see.
Send
So
Hopkins.
I got a question for you. Is there any chance you think they move on from Kyler?
I do not think they move on from Kyler any sooner than the 2025 season. I mean, if you look at it, the dead cap hit for trading him or releasing or anything is just ridiculously prohibitive, right? Like it, and there's like the dead cap is huge, and like the cap savings is negative. You'd have to make cap room to move that contract. Everything they've said is, I know they're going to say what they're going to say, but they've said they're committed to building an offense. They think Kyler can be a problem for other defenses. Obviously, he's recovering from that injury. They need time. So just in my thought process, I think they're giving 2023 as a sort of a transition mulligan, let him get healthy. And then they're going to want to see what does he look like healthy in 2024 in year 2 of this offense. And at that point, after 2024 is completed, has finished, they're going to have a better idea of what he looks like in that offense. And if for some reason it isn't what they had hoped, we're at a point going into 2025 where trading him or moving on from him isn't as prohibitive from a cap perspective. So to me, that's kind of what I would anticipate is the timeline for them to kind of assess how they feel he fits as a long-term quarterback.
If you want the numbers specifically in 2023, if they move on from him this year, it's a $96.5 million dead cap hit. That would put $80 million of unallocated cap space onto the cap. He's a $16 million cap hit this year. There's something that a lot of people don't get, but it would be a $90 million cap hit. Next year, ironically, his cap explodes and he goes to $51 million cap hit. And if they move on from him in 2024, his cap number goes from $52 million to $81.5 million. They would have to create $30 million additional dollars in cap space. And like Joseph said, in 2025 is the first year where they would save money. They cut him, they would save $12.5 million on the cap.
That is a regrettable contract.
Well, I will say, I know it's an unpopular opinion. I don't actually have a problem with that. I know it hasn't worked out well, but I think that's more about the former GM. With quarterbacks, you either extend them or you move on from them, and you had to either do that or not. And we look at it like every next quarterback contract is going to eclipse that. And the way the life span of those contracts is, year 1 they look bad. Year 2, they look better. By year 3 or 4, it's kind of a bargain as long as they're still good, right? So. And
or your Dak Prescott, whose contract is progressively getting worse.
Right. So the question is, if he becomes a franchise quarterback or goes back to being one, in my opinion, I think by year 3 or 4, we're going to be looking at the cap number when other people are making $75 million for new contracts. We're going to be like, yeah, because think about Matthew Stafford, when they won the Super Bowl, right, with him, he was at $27 million because it was like the last year of that deal. But like, I did some math in the video, like that deal when he signed it was comparable to Kyler's contract, but by years 4 or 5, they end up becoming kind of bargains. So I know people are down on Kyler, and it's an unpopular opinion I have, but I'm okay with that from a long-term perspective.
Look at the Mahomes contract. Looks great.
The only reason why I would say that the Lions might potentially draft a quarterback is just for that reason, to get away from having to pay one player that amount.
Well, Gannon did say that Kyler was the franchise QB, no?
Yeah, at least what he said, he's committed to him. But of course, you're going to say that, right? I get that, right?
I was about to say, Joe Douglas said the same thing about Sam Darnold.
Oh, that's tough. Tough. And then
look, I'm just saying.
Right. Yeah. Ron Rivera also said he was going to use Gibby like CMC 2 years ago. So.
Yeah, I know Tigo talking about that Mahomes contract. It doesn't matter. We're all futile when Mahomes is like the 10th highest paid quarterback next year, and we're just all gonna keep losing to them when they can buy other people. But all right, let's move on. I'm now sitting here at 8 with the Falcons, and this is very difficult for me now. Um, this is a very weird team. We are a lot better than we thought we were going to be last year. We thought we were going to be terrible, but the young group of guys that we've put together kind of works. You know, we have a head coach that seems like he knows how to call plays. If we see Tennessee's offense has turned into the worst offense maybe in football from any sort of standpoint, and the Falcons, they don't have a lot of talent on offense. They didn't have really a quarterback, and they were competitive every Sunday. We didn't win every Sunday, but we were competitive, and they were a trap game for, on your schedule every week. So not going to get a quarterback this year. It looks like we're going to ride with Ritter. Possibly we go up here and move if we're the Falcons. And there's a lot of needs. We need corner. Doesn't have corner listed here. They need some secondary help. And Devon Witherspoon sitting here is super tasty. I know the two edge rushers here. We got Luke Van Ness and Nolan Smith is somewhere to be found all the way down here at 22. I think if we go pass rush and Tyree Wilson is gone, I think they're going to go with Nolan Smith over Luke Van Ness. I think he's, like you said, a Michael Parsons type guy. But I think if Devon Witherspoon is sitting here, he's the number one corner on the board. You kind of just have to go and take him, bulk up the secondary. This is a very good defensive line draft. So we can find pass rushers later in this draft. We can find guys to lock it down. It's a good corner draft at the top end, the first round, but I don't think in round 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, you're not getting any sort of corners out there. So I think you go Devon Witherspoon here at 8 with the Falcons.
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's such a deep class at those two positions. They can hit edge rush in round 2 or 3 and find someone like maybe an Ojulari or someone like that who's going to be solid for them. I will say though, I actually live in Georgia. And I have a lot of friends who are Falcons fans. They have been trying to find a legit pass rusher for it feels like a decade. So that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go edge right this early, but man, for many Falcons fans, they just want to get that true dog on the edge.
I love this pick because I think people are forgetting that the Falcons spent a ton of money in free agency, specifically on the defense, right? Like AJ Terrell gets lost in the conversation of the great cornerbacks in the NFL because he's unfortunately in Atlanta. Like he is a top 10 corner in this league. Like he should be above guys, in my opinion, like Xavier Howard, Jalen Ramsey, all of those, because I think he's that good. And like another guy that's on that defense that's like insanely good is like Grady Jarrett, and they finally have help. Like you get Jesse Bates back there with Grant, who did a good things. You got AJ Terrell some help in Devon Witherspoon. Don't forget that they drafted Ebikide last year. They signed Bud Dupree this offseason. They got Calais Campbell this offseason. Like that's starting to be a very scary defense, especially with the NFC South being arguably the worst division in all of sports, right? Like I could put up some college Power 5 conferences that could probably get a couple of games on the NFC South right now. So I love this move. And Devon Witherspoon I have as my number 1 corner in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, maybe the Saints with Derek Carr, but yeah, we're looking at some bad quarterbacks in this division. For Atlanta, so, maybe Atlanta just runs. Maybe Cordell Patterson plays quarterback next year. Who knows? At this point, maybe they just line him up and we run Wildcat all game. If I didn't think I didn't feel any juice from Ritter watching him the last 3-4 games of the season. I felt zero juice from him whatsoever. So I don't think he's their guy. But I mean, they won in Tennessee with Tannehill isn't horrible. He is kind of now, but when they had Tannehill, he was like the 15th, 16th kind of. He was like Andy Dalton-esque quarterback. So if you can find maybe you sign a guy, maybe Jared Goff, like you said, Dan, Lions move on, Goff's on there. Goff fits well in an offense like this. It's a very similar type offense where you lean on the run and you hit easy passes. So, yeah. All right. Number 9, the Bears is Daniel, but Daniel, you want to get aggressive here.
I do. I think that the Pittsburgh Steelers have been rumored to be interested in trading with the Chicago Bears if their player is there. I think there's two players they had in mind. One is already off the board, the other one isn't. I'm gonna go ahead and make the trade here and bring the Steelers up to number 9 in the top 10.
All right, we're forced this trade through. I like that. I pulled up the trade, and the simulator already knows Steelers are the team right here. So Steelers now on the clock. Where are you going with this pick?
Well, I think this is the moment for the Steelers to go up there and get their guy. I'm going with Christian Gonzalez, cornerback. The last time the Steelers selected a cornerback in the first round, they ended up getting burned with Artie Burns because the Cincinnati Bengals went up and took Willie Jackson in front of them. And so, you're looking at the Steelers, what they did this offseason. They lost Cam Sutton. They did pick up Patrick Peterson, who did have a phenomenal year last year, but he is on the wrong side of 30. On the opposite end of him is Levi Wallace, who's not the most speedy of guys. And when you have guys like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Amari Cooper in the division, I think you need to solidify that outside cornerback position. Go up there, pick your guy. Christian Gonzalez is the next Pittsburgh Steeler.
I think Gonzalez is a great pickup for you guys, especially with his ability to move his hips. You watch him backpedaling. You watch him, keep coverage while being able to keep up with somebody in the back pedal. Then his ability to locate the ball in the air. I think he's going to be a pretty good corner faster versus later in the NFL.
I mean,
partner
and
him
we
with
trust-
Patrick Peterson, and that's now a guy that can help bring along a guy like Christian Gonzalez, who I think is super, super good. It's what the Steelers, I think, have been missing is people in the secondary not named Minkah Fitzpatrick who can give guys like Hightower and Watt a beat, because that's all they need. Like, Watt just needs the quarterback to just hesitate for a split second, because if you can get the quarterback to hesitate for a split second, TJ Watt's wrecking your game. Christian Gonzalez is the type of guy that when receivers look open, they're not open. And I love this. I love the Steelers getting aggressive and coming up for their guy.
I trust Tomlin too. You got to trust Tomlin with his DBs. He knows what the hell he's doing with DBs. He's done a lot with a little over his time frame there. And like you said, Pat P, it's he's 50-50 at this point. Some plays he shows it, some plays he is just getting burnt toast out there. But he's a great locker room guy. There was not a negative thing I heard about him in his 2 years in Minnesota. Everybody seemed to love him. So I think this is a good spot. And I like it being aggressive. They kind of stayed put. They weren't hyper aggressive to go get Kenny Pickett too early. I liked what I saw from Kenny Pickett. You got to Pickett and Pickens. That's a good combo right there. T-shirts galore. Got to figure out the running game a little bit, obviously. But I agree. Defense is Pittsburgh's MO. And they if they're going to move up, they're going to go up and get their defensive guy.
Dan, quick question. Obviously, you're Steelers guy. You're covering that. What are your reactions to all of the reports that you see about Matt Canada not being involved in the draft process because like the GM and Tomlin don't trust him? And like, I have a bunch of friends that are Steelers fans, and we were having this conversation the moment this season ended that the first name that should be announced on Black Monday as being gone should have been Matt Canada. Like, he should have been fired. There was no reason. What are your thoughts on them bringing him back? And now all these reports that you're seeing, I was seeing that he's not even involved he hasn't gone to a single pro day. Everybody else on the Pittsburgh Steelers staff, running backs coach, wide receivers coach, O-lines coach, but he hasn't gone to a single pro day. What are your thoughts on all that?
Well, in previous years, the offensive coordinator really wasn't the main focal point as to where the Steelers were going to go, as far as where he showed up, whether it was Matt Canada last year or if it was Randy Fichtner or whoever it's been in the previous years. To me, I think that Matt Canada gets a lot of flack, but there's a lot of context that goes along with that. Last season you're coming off of the future Hall of Fame quarterback Ben Roethlisberger into Mitch Trubisky, and you go into that entire offseason, that training camp, and Mitch Trubisky was quarterback number one at the height of the worst part of the schedule, going into Buffalo, Miami, Tampa Bay, Eagles. You throw in a rookie quarterback who himself stated that he didn't have much opportunity to talk with the offensive coordinator. That offense was going to be simplified. You also had the offensive line not gelling too much in the beginning of the season. Najee Harris was coming off of a foot injury as well. And so the Steelers had two critical pieces in the interior offensive line change with Mason Cole and Daniels, they needed some time to mesh. And as we saw that throughout the year, that offensive line began to build together, and that running game became something towards the second half of the season. Pickett entered the season at the hardest part. He had a couple of picks. I mean, there was the people were saying you can't spell Pickett without pick, right? And so that was a real thing in the beginning part of his career. He then ended up going 7-2 down the stretch, only throwing one interception and winning 2 games on his, on his arm on two, against the Raiders and against the Baltimore Ravens. So, in my opinion, based on where they were coming from, I didn't think that you're going to open up the playbook and be extremely imaginative early on in Pickett's first few starts. And I think that we're going to be able to see that change coming forward. Also, I think the Steelers are going to target offensive tackle maybe a little bit later in the second round and give him a little bit more protection. Dan Moore, he's going into his third year as that left tackle. He kind of, had a sophomore slump last season. It wasn't the sophomore jump that we were hoping. But, when it comes to him being a former 4th-round pick, I don't think the expectations were there for him. He was going to be a guy that was raw and that was going to need time for development. And I think he's on the right track. The opposite side, on the right side, with Chicks Core we know what he is. He's been there for 6 years. I think that when you're trying to acquire a right tackle, it's probably a lot easier to do so in the second round than a left tackle would be. And so, in my opinion, I think they're going in the right direction. And Matt Canada, it's going to be time to put up or shut up at this point. There's not going to be any excuses. So if he comes out flat this time around, the Steelers aren't a team to fire coordinators midseason. They did pick up Glenn Thomas as a offensive coach assistant, so I can foresee him possibly being the guy taking the reins over if Canada continues to stumble. However, that running game that he was able to put together, really became the identity of the Steelers in the second half of the season. And I don't think you want to kind of scratch that away, especially after really only giving him half a season with Kenny Pickett as the guy, and really to sit with him and see what he likes, dislikes. And so I think a lot of fans were just a little bit overzealous and ready to jump the gun, so to speak, and not really look at it in full context. But I do think he is on the hot seat. At the end of the day, the business is winning, and the Steelers, that's what they're going to need to do. And if they don't put up points on the board, they're not going to, and he won't be a member of the Steelers, after this upcoming season. But I think this is an opportunity for him to show what he has and his, what he's able to put down on the field as far as imaginative plays. But I do get the reasoning behind why so many want him canned. I'll be honest, I was one of them at first, but I had to sit down and look at it from a bigger picture and take a step back and realize that he had a lot of hurdles to overcome, a rookie quarterback, and a lot of new pieces as well. I mean, you also look at the other side, the other players. You have a second-year running back in Najee Harris last season, a second-year tight end. Deontay Johnson's been there a while, but he's not been as consistent as you want. George Pickens was a rookie, so there was a lot of youth to this team. There's no way you could have opened up the playbook as early as you probably wanted to. But this is going to be a true test this season for the Steelers offense.
I agree. All right, let's roll on into pick number 10. Stevie B, your defending NFC champions, Philadelphia Eagles, picking in the top 10 because the New Orleans Saints don't know how to trade last year in this draft. And you got a shiny, I shouldn't say new, but you got a shiny, expensive quarterback now. So what are the Eagles doing here?
This one is tough. I mean, Skoronski is up there. I mean, they do have Lane Johnson. He's getting a little older, but I think he's signed to like 27. So it's not like a must to go there. You still got Van Ness on the board. You still got Nolan Smith on the board. And then, of course, Bijan Robinson. But I think with Miles Sanders running for 1,300 yards next year, you don't necessarily need to add a Bijan. But it's tough because they could go Bijan. But I think I'm going to go with Nolan Smith here at this pick.
Let's go. Although Nolan Smith, very slept on. PFF, not the best rankings. I agree. They lost a lot on this defense that I don't think is getting enough talked about. This was one of the best defenses in the NFL, and they lost 3 guys on the defensive line, I believe. So this is
a couple
big,
linebackers too.
Yeah, this is a big need for a creative defense that rush. They change up looks, and Nolan Smith is that plug and play kind of joker that kind of goes anywhere, and you can put him anywhere and get after the quarterback.
Yeah, the only thing I would wonder with that is he a redundancy with Hassan Reddick because they're kind of similar? I wonder if, I mean, I agree with going after edge. I wonder if they would look at someone more like a Van Ness or a Miles Murphy just based on maybe a position where they, you know, might need someone to fit that role a little more. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
think
go
Hassan
ahead, go ahead.
Reddick is young enough. Sorry, to where you're looking at it and you're just like, he's young enough and under contract long enough that you can double dip here. But the great thing when you look at a guy like a Hassan Reddick and now you're adding a Nolan Smith is you can really run it in that, like what we were talking about earlier, Joseph, in like
Mhm.
those amoeba fronts.
Mhm.
Imagine you can put, if you look at their depth chart, right? Imagine you put up in the middle there, you can put in a guy like uh Brandon Graham, then you put in interior defensive guys, Fletcher Cox, and then insert another interior defensive lineman or another edge guy. And then on the outside of each one of them, you have Hassan Reddick on one side and Nolan Smith on the other side, just
Yeah.
standing up on that wide nine. And now you've got that amoeba front that you're just looking at, and you're just like, we have no idea if all five are coming, if just four are coming, if both
Right.
guys are dropping. You know what? Like, we just have no idea what's going to happen here. And so I think that to me is where you would like, if you're going to commit to really playing like these amoeba fronts, 3-4 fronts, Nolan Smith plus Hassan Reddick is absolutely insane.
And right now it's you know, you're looking at Super Bowl or bust, right? We got to stop Patrick Mahomes. We got to stop the Chiefs, right? So
Yeah, and I mean, God, what they have 3 guys double-digit sacks last year. Like they get sacks from every position, so they can scheme anybody to get open, and sometimes you don't even need to ski. So I actually really like this pick for the Eagles, which is unfortunate. Could they possibly go wide receiver here? Like take the number 1 wide receiver, and then you just have an offensive juggernaut with 3, potentially 3 1-type receivers now. You're gonna have to pay Devontae Smith here in a little bit, and I think he's one of the best number 2s you're gonna find. So maybe if you're not all in on paying for him, you could find his replacement. I think a Quentin Johnson in the slot would be nightmare fuels to game plan against because that's a big, fast receiver. Or if you want to put Devontae in the slot and let that little man work his magic,
Can you
I could
imagine
see the Eagles.
Bijan? Can you imagine Bijan on this team?
that's what I was. That's another
the
one that I
move.
was thinking. You know, to take, to stop maybe even Mahomes from getting the ball so much. You can run the ball a lot more. You know, they want to run the ball. So I was really considering Bijan here, but
Well, Miles Sanders went to
Miami.
Carolina, didn't he?
Carolina,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep.
Someone,
So they mean it. I'm one of the people who doesn't believe in taking running back first round from a roster building perspective, but I also think if you're a team that is really a good team and you do that in the short term, it can help you put you over the top. So
absolutely.
if you're that kind of team, I'm not going to hate it, even though it's against my roster building philosophy. So the idea of them going Bijan would be scary.
And they don't really have many holes. But here's a fun stat that I saw on Twitter that absolutely blew my mind. And this is the biggest reason why I don't think the Eagles will take Bijan at 10. Did you know that if Bijan gets taken in the top 10, he will become he will, depending on where he goes, he will be one of the top 10 highest paid running backs in the NFL because of the rookie wage scale.
Mm-hmm.
That's how little the NFL values running backs.
Yeah.
But it's like Joseph said, at 10, you have no business being here at 10. You have no business being here at all, let alone having 2 first-round picks. And you shouldn't. This doesn't exist.
It's house money.
Massive luxury.
Right.
It's house money, right?
And Bijan is so clearly the number 1 back. I think most years I'd lean with you, Joseph, where we have good backs, not really great backs. Bijan feels like a great back. I mean, he could be a plug-and-play kind of guy that possibly wins the rushing title next year, especially depending on the team. Now, I will say Philadelphia, Sirianni has a real knack of just pulling out his best back. Like Miles Sanders didn't get touches when he needed to get touches, particularly in games that they were losing. And I don't know, they have a weird back rotation there. So he's probably not big on the elite slicing back, but God, that would be scary for that one. But let's move to Tennessee now.
real quick, look what Brees Hall did to the Jets before he went down. Like,
Yes.
I'm just saying, you get an elite running back into a team who's already elite. That's
Mhm.
I'm just saying.
But they got Brees pretty late though. On top, I shouldn't say pretty. They got Brees in the second round, so didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe there. I mean, there's a couple of guys. I mean, how about a Devon A-Chain from A&M, like a pure speed back that just. I mean, they run that zone offensive blocking scheme on top of it. Like, that's a better Miles Sanders, if we're being honest here, which could be a real pain in the ass to deal with. Even if you want to, I could see the Eagles run an option with Jalen Hurts because Sirianni's just kind of a weird guy. And he doesn't really care about that. But let's go to Dan at Tennessee here at 11, who don't have really, they kind of are the losers of this draft right now if they're stuck at 11, I think.
I think you're right. In an ideal situation, I think they're going to be looking for more trade possibilities. But I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball here. And Hendon Hooker.
Oh, I like it.
Wow.
Let's see if I can find. Here we go. I like that. Hendon Hooker. We're going ultra aggressive. I
Well,
love this.
And here's the logic behind it. Obviously, we all know Tannehill is not as favorable with the current brass as he once was. He doesn't have the arm strength. Not that he ever had great arm strength, but Hooker does have a lot of the measurables that nobody can teach. So you look at his ability to read, and I get Tennessee ran a very quarterback-friendly offense last year, but you're going to sit him with Malik Willis for a year, basically, because Hooker's going to need some time for that knee to get right and get some stability back in it and just get confidence back in it. Can Malik Willis still be something? We'll wait and see. But you've got two guys who are going to be competing to replace Tannehill after 2023. And I'll be honest, you could see Hooker go really from here to the end of the first round to the early part of the second round. How many teams need a quarterback still? They're not going to be many, but this is one of the ones. And I got to imagine if I know that, one of the few other teams around that still would potentially take him would be Washington, who's just a couple picks behind you.
Now, I would like to note that, like, in my opinion, Tennessee is probably one of the teams I think is most likely to trade up to number 3 with the Cardinals. Obviously, I did the Raiders trade because I had both those picks. It made it a little easier. But, outside of this particular thought exercise we're doing, I think that the Titans trading up and taking one of the whichever, quarterback they like best is also something that is high on the list of possibilities.
If you guys remember when we were talking about the Detroit pick at 6, I mentioned that I could see if one of those quarterbacks goes and lasts to number 6, Detroit and Tennessee are a real strong trade possibility.
I think
Fire the whole
everyone's
staff.
yeah.
Fire everybody in Tennessee if they make this pick.
Not a Hendon Hooker guy.
Fire everybody immediately.
Not
They
there,
don't
not
get
there,
to-
right?
They don't
Not-
get to finish round 1.
Oh my God! I
They don't
mean,
even
Mike
finish the
Mike
draft.
Vrabel needs a quararback. They're trying to get Mike a quarterback. That's
And so
exactly
they're
what
getting
this
Hendon
pick.
Hooker,
Hey, it's Tennessee.
25, who played at Tennessee, the most anti-NFL scheme in college.
Well, let's
Think
take
about the
age
jersey
out of it
sales.
for one simple reason. How old was Kurt Warner when he was a rookie in the NFL? I mean,
100.
other than the 2 days he spent in Green Bay.
So, so was Brandon Whedon, but
Right. There's been
I
a lot
mean-
of guys far older than him that get started. Warren Moon, showing my age here a little bit, but he was like 28, 29 when he made it to the NFL. Jim Kelly was 24, I want to say. So it's not unheard of. Take the age out of it because Tom Brady, and if he would have came in at 25 or 26, he still would have played 20 years.
The only problem I have on this pick is what is Vrabel's status with the new GM and ownership as far as long-term coaching situations? Because we all know Hooker's gonna sit this year. Like, he's not playing this year for any team, and a team that has a quarterback that's maybe willing to move on from their quarterback's gonna want Hooker. And I just don't know if Tennessee's in that spot for that.
Their general managers, Rand Carthon, came from the 49ers organization. And this is a fun pick. Realistically, I think they're more likely to either trade up and get the guy they really want, or they're going to sit and wait and try to find their Brock Purdy, someone like that later. So I don't know that they would end up doing it, but listen, think about the jersey sales, right? Tennessee to
This local
Tennessee, right?
guy.
So, but yeah, I don't think that's probably what we'll see. I mean, imagine if 5 quarterbacks go in the top 11. That would be crazy.
It would be crazy. I
I
think but I also think Tennessee would just be better served to just run Malik Willis for a year. Really just feed him to the wolves. And if he comes out successful, like that's great. Like you have a guy that you found in the third. And if he sucks, take Caleb Williams or Drake May next year. Like
I
it's a win-win in either situation.
Yeah, I think they're out on Malik Willis definitely from what I've read lately. That's why they're trying to get real aggressive to move up here. Um I think, Hooker, I could they go Hooker here if the quarterbacks are gone, they can't. Let's say they can't get up because who knows what the assets are that they would need to move up. It's not like they have a shiny wide receiver that anybody's going to want really that they're willing to move off of. Maybe somebody will take Derrick Henry and picks to let them slide up for them, but Derrick Henry's expensive. I just don't think Vrabel maybe gets the assurance if they have Hooker waiting to start next year. Whereas if he doesn't and they're terrible, okay, cool. Malik Willis, you fed him to the Wolves and you're picking at 2 and you can get Drake May or Caleb Williams. I'm unemployed. So that's my only thing here. It's kind of like Nagy and the Bears with Fields. They went all in to go up and get Fields and he still ended up unemployed, even though Fields showed positive signs. So I like this pick a lot from a fun aspect because the draft is people are always very conservative in their mock drafts and the draft is never conservative. It is never chalk whatsoever. People
We're at 11 and not a single offensive lineman is gone.
that
I'm sitting
that
here at 13 and as the Jets and I'm laughing. I'm laughing. I'm so happy right now. I'm gonna get to pick the offensive tackle that I want at 13. Make it happen.
you definitely are because let's go to 12 now. I'm back on the clock with the Texans. Thank you, Deshaun Watson, for this pick number 12. Cleveland, you were so good this year. Massages and all. I just took a quarterback. I got to get my quarterback a weapon. And I think this is a run the card in. I do think Jackson Smith-Njigba is the best wide receiver in this draft, but you just can't not go with Quentin Johnson here as the Texas kid. That's the pick for Houston. He's a big body, sure-handed receiver. He can catch the football. He's kind of surprisingly fast if you watch him in that semifinal. I mean, he caught a 5-yard slant and took it 70 yards to the house. For a big body guy, safety net, get my quarterback weapons. I could also see possibly going tight end here. If the wide receivers get scooped up before them, just get my quarterback weapons. If we don't have a quarterback here, we're going defense again. We're going defense. We'll go Kalijah Cansey if we go Will Anderson or something like that with the first pick and just load up on the defense. Let Davis Mills die on the stake next year. Pick Caleb Williams number 1 or Drake May at number 2. And all of a sudden, DeMeco Ryans has a powerhouse in a division that you don't fear the Colts, you don't fear the Titans, and the it's the Jags and then the Texans really quick again. So I think you got to go wide receiver here with my quarterback.
Yeah, I don't mind. I like JSN better than Quentin Johnson. There's a couple concerns with Quentin Johnson for me. His ability to get off of press coverage as such a big guy is horrible, and that I don't particularly like. The other part I don't like is his contested catch ability. For such a big guy, his contested catch ability is not that good. And he catches the ball with his body a lot more than with his hands. Those are some of the things that really concern me about Quentin Johnson. He has a ton of upside without a doubt. And of course, those things can possibly be worked on. But I just prefer JSN a little bit more. But I'm not mad at the Quentin Johnson pick.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think JSN he is going to be whatever team he goes to, the quarterback's best friend, because the best quote I've heard about Jackson Smith-Njigba is that he's not going to run the route that you call on the play sheet. He's going to run the right route.
Yep.
Right? He knows how to dissect the defense. He knows he's a second quarterback out there. He's going to find that soft spot in the zone and the coverage and man coverage and just get open. So for me, I would have gone Jackson Smith-Njigba, especially since they have a guy in Houston that they really like. in Nico Collins that kind of fits that mold of what
Mhm.
Quentin Johnson already is. 6'4", 215, speedy receiver who can play the X. Like that's what Nico Collins is. Get something a little bit different in Jackson Smith and Jigba. But if they went this route, I get it. Especially with Bryce Young, who's like, 5'2", 55 pounds, can't look over the offensive line. Just get as big guys as you can, right?
Get it to the vicinity. I agree. I would go. I'm kind of trying to go where I think they're leaning. I agree with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Only thing I don't like about him is the whole situation, how it played out at the end at Ohio State. Apparently he was more banged up and not really ready to come back, and Ohio State wasn't very upfront with that. That's why he left. They kind of made it look like he kind of bailed on his team before a semifinal, which is messed up when you're arguably the best receiver in the country. So I think that was oversold a little bit here, but all right, it's time for the Jets, and you're punching this ticket in, right? Like Aaron Rodgers.
Easily.
Aaron Rodgers, we still gonna pick here at 13? Are they giving up a first?
Absolutely. Aaron Rodgers isn't worth a first. The guy's 40 years old, is about to make $110 million over the next 2 years. Yeah, you can at me, Green Bay Packers fans. Well, I'll. This is what I do all day: is fight with Green Bay Packers fans on Twitter. But the Jets being here and having all of the tackles on the board is absolutely phenomenal, and they can go in whatever direction that they want. And I think that the conversation really comes here. You have to go offensive tackle. If you look at the Jets' contract structures right now, we have one offensive tackle signed beyond this year. Next year, we're going to have one guy on the roster, and that's our fourth or fifth round pick in Max Mitchell, who I'm a big fan of. Mekhi Becton's on the last year of his deal, unless we take his extension. Dwayne Brown is 1,000,000 years old, and he's on the last year of his deal. So you really got to get someone that you can put on this team immediately that can either sit and develop behind these guys and really just be a safety net. Between Mekhi Becton, Max Mitchell, Dwayne Brown, and Elijah Vera Tucker, they missed 40 games last year. 40 games. And so while I am a big believer in a guy like Mekhi Becton and Dwayne Brown to be able to play all year, I'm not going to risk it, especially with going and getting Aaron Rodgers. I'm going to get the guy who's the number one tackle on my board. I think this might surprise some people with all 5 of these guys here. But I'm going to take the Georgia kid, Broderick Jones. I think in 2 years' time, 3 years' time, when we're talking about the best offensive lineman in this draft, arguably maybe the best player in this year's draft, I think Broderick Jones is going to be in that conversation. The biggest concern that people have with his game is how raw he is. He only played 16 games at the next level. But let's be honest, being on a practice squad at Georgia is like being on another top 25 school. I know for a fact that the practice squad at Georgia can probably be a ranked school in college football. And that's not a thing. He is so silky. He is so smooth. He is, in my opinion, by far and away the best offensive tackle prospect in this draft. And if you're the Jets and if you're Joe Douglas, you're laughing when you make this pick.
I'm actually surprised all the tackles are here at this point, and it's I get it. I probably would have went Skorinski here just from a more polished type person, especially, I mean, Jets are this year, next year, right? For the window with Rodgers, like maybe Rodgers plays 2 years max. I could see before he floats off onto a acid trip or wherever he goes. So the Jets are win now. But like you said, SEC pass rushes, Georgia pass rushes in practice are hell, and so
I just have Peter Skoronski projected as a guard at the next level. Sub 33-inch arm scares me. And when you look at, like, what is a Peter Skoronski comp at the NFL? It's Elijah Vera Tucker. Elijah Vera Tucker's a guard, right?
Yep.
And that's the Jets literally picked Peter Skoronski like 3 years ago in Elijah Vera Tucker, and he's playing right guard right now. And so knowing Joe Douglas, I don't think he looks at Peter Skoronski as a tackle at the next level. He's my favorite offensive lineman, but at tackle, Broderick Jones is my favorite.
And they need an anchor point. Their offensive line is kind of undersized tweeners. It feels like at a lot of spots, converted tackles to guards. Even, Mekhi Becton's kind of just that was his knock coming out on top of the injuries. All right, Joseph, the Patriots, 14, very interesting pick, and I have no idea where the Patriots are going.
So yeah, it's really interesting. I will say, the Arizona Cardinals new general manager Monty Austin cut his teeth to the Patriots. So I've had a little bit of time looking at their draft histories, trying to get an idea of what I think Austin Fort will do for the Cardinals. And they really do like taking either like tackles in the first round. They like taking those. They also like taking defensive linemen, edge, and I was torn here between going with kind of a bigger edge defender because they like those bigger edges who they can play in their hybrid fronts, or a tackle. And I know, with Peter Skoronsky, the arm length thing is a concern. I've listened to some people talk about this who do know what they're talking about when it comes to this. And the deal with it is it does matter. But if you have short arms, you can be successful. You just have to be technically pristine. Right, your technician abilities as a tackle have to be perfect. I think Skoronsky, though, is that kind of player. And I would also add to this that the Patriots, if you look at, they have a history of taking offensive linemen who aren't always prototypical size. Isaiah Wynn was a 6'2" guard. You look at Michael Onenwu, who's like this huge, massive like guard. And then, they've got Trent Brown, who's this huge, massive tackle. So I just feel like they look at offensive linemen maybe a little differently than other people, and they've had success finding them. And they sometimes go with guys who are not prototypical but can play, right? So I just feel like Peter Skoronsky is a guy who they look at and they say, man, he is too good to pass up. We think he can play tackle, but if he doesn't, fine. He'll be a Pro Bowl guard for us. And I think they make that pick, and they are excited about it.
Oh, I was going to see if you maybe wanted to trade away the pick.
Oh,
yeah. I think they sit here and they thank you very much and say no interdivision trade for you. So,
I wasn't talking about the Jets. I was thinking Seattle might want to come up.
Oh, okay.
Seattle go tackle again.
Yeah, go Peter Skoronsky.
Oh, maybe.
Wait, does Seattle need it? Well, you want to?
No, they drafted 2 tackles last year, but you could play him at guard.
They're fine at tackle, but guard. Okay.
I don't know what Pete doesn't like trading up though. Neither does New England. Doesn't like picking at their own spot, and
they like trading back.
And so does
the
Pete.
Patriots like trading back.
Nobody likes trading up here. I like this pick a lot, actually. I think this is a very New England type pick. Northwestern guy, Belichick. I need guys with 10,000 IQ. And Bob and Mac Jones seem to be BFF, so they're going to try and make it work. All right, who's up? The Pack. Stevie B with the Pack. What do we got?
Oh, man, it's a tough one. I'm looking at Van Ness. I'm looking at Michael Mayer. I'm looking at JSN still on the board. Even though they're not known for drafting wide receiver early, now that Aaron Rodgers is gone, they might want to help out. Their young quarterback. I'm gonna go JSN. I'm gonna go JSN. I like him, there with Christian Watson as well. Give your young quarterback some confidence, some guys that he can work with early. So yeah, I'm gonna go JSN here.
This is the biggest FU to Aaron Rodgers, and I absolutely love this pick. So the Rodgers relationship has deteriorated to so much. They flat out hate each other, and they would do this just to stick a finger to Aaron Rodgers. I absolutely love this pick.
He's never thrown a touchdown pass to a first-round wide receiver ever in his career. And then the year they move on from him, boom, first-round wide receiver. Right. I love it.
Exactly.
Love it.
That is awesome.
Oh my God. I love that pick. And I think you got to go best receiver.
From my chat, I think this is hilarious. Johnny Jimenez in my chat, I'm also streaming this, said Rodgers just threw a chair into the darkness.
That's awesome.
And then joined it.
Oh my God. He actually is going to go on another retreat during the draft, so he doesn't have to see this. But when he comes out, yes, he God. He'll be blaming the Jets for not taking another receiver, even though he made them sign 50 dudes that were 100 years old to add to his
squad. With the offensive rookie of the year and brought Lazard in. What more does the guy want?
It's Aaron Rodgers, okay?
Yeah,
it's Aaron Rodgers.
Let's throw to the offensive rookie of the year.
He's too picky, okay? Don't let that. All right. I got the Commanders here. Another very awkward spot, an awkward team that won way more games than they were supposed to. It sounds like they're okay with the quarterback for now. They're gonna give it a ride. I was surprised Ron Rivera wasn't fired last year. Honestly, I thought it was time to move on. It's just, Riverboat Ron is a good coach. He's not a great coach. He's not gonna take teams to the promised land. He had stacked teams in Carolina, and they had one really good run, and they obviously lost the Super Bowl there. And Cam Newton played out of his mind, so he's not a great evaluator of quarterbacks. Not a great kind of really anything. It feels like for this team, but new ownership, hopefully a new stadium. They could erase some of the past here. It's an ugly spot. I was looking here, and I think it might be sleeping on a couple people. I was thinking we're going to go secondary here. We need to beef up the back end. Obviously, we know the front 5 or 6 or whatever, 7, 8, 9, 10 they put on the defensive line is elite, but they couldn't cover on the back end a lick. I think they're going to let the offense kind of go as it is. You have a couple of decent receivers. Running back seems to be a good committee there. And we're just going to let it roll there at quarterback and figure it out. I mean, maybe this team tries to move up here. I don't see any of the offensive linemen here. Guard center, they say, is a need, but the interior offensive line in this draft are not at this spot whatsoever.
Harris did play guard up until this last year. This is his first year as a tackle. Don't forget that.
Yeah, this is true. This is true. He would be my first guard. Oh, yeah, I would take him as the first guard if you're going to put Skoronski at tackle. There. I think they go corner here, though. I actually really like Deontay Banks. I think he's a very plug and play cornerback. You stick him in there, he's gonna shut people down. Maybe not the highest end guy. He's not gonna be, an island out there on his own, but he has such a good ball closing ability. I absolutely love it. A fantastic tackler, which Ron is really going to like. I mean, if Ron does anything, it is the defense. And he's a great tackler. He can help in the run support. They already have a great defensive line. Third corner off the board, I don't hate it. I have him a little bit higher than Joey Porter Jr. I think Joey Porter Jr. is much more of kind of a athletic guy, whereas I think Banks can help off the edge. He can play in there, help give that pass rush time, like we talked about with anybody, Pittsburgh, Detroit, anybody. Just give the pass rush a little bit of time, and they're going to absolutely murder let the pass rush murder somebody. So Washington at 16, I would be trying to trade up and get a quarterback because I'm really, obviously, I don't think any. I mean, they beat the Cowboys. It looked good. It was a great one game for them, but still, I go corner here in the secondary, and I think we're picking in the top 5 next year. Okay, Daniel, you are now back on the clock with the Bears.
So with the Bears, I think they're going to try to protect Justin Fields. I think they're going to go tackle in this position. I'm looking at Darnell Wright out of Tennessee as being that guy to protect Justin Fields. He's shown that he can do some things with his legs. He's got a powerful arm. He just needs some protection. He was running for his life last year. Let's give him some protection. Let's give him some opportunity to throw the ball and make some magic with his arm. Darnell Wright is going to be the tackle here.
Now,
the tackles really slid, so that this is a heck of a pick for them to be able to get one of these better tackles at this point.
Oh yeah.
The question
Darnell
is,
Wright's projected to be a top 10 pick. He could be the first tackle taken off the board.
He's interesting because, it depends. Do you think he's exclusively a right tackle or can play left tackle? Which he's, obviously kind of saying he can play both, and a lot of people think he can. If you think he can play left tackle, then you consider him early.
I think he comes in and he's a top 10 right tackle in the NFL day one. I think he's that good. I don't think he has the ability to go into that left tackle spot really, but Darnell Wright is such a mauler in the run game. You put him on the right side of any offensive line, watch out.
All right, perfect. All right, Dan, back up with Detroit. Oh, wait, right before. Do you think they try and get JSN for Justin Fields? Just a quick out there. Do you think possibly do they try and get Justin Fields as wide receiver?
I think they're happy with DJ Moore out there. I think that they just need to shore up that offensive line more than anything.
I agree.
Yeah, Moore, Claypool, Mooney.
Well, that Claypool pick's not looking so trade's not looking so great right now for the
All
30
they needed was
second.
that offensive line last year.
This is very true. All right, Tan Lions at 18, your second pick.
I'm really torn between one of two options here, but I believe in making strength stronger. I think the value comes down to two guys here. You either got Kalijah Cansey or you got boy, I always kill his first name, Robinson, running back out of Texas, and I think the Lions are going to take.
Can I interest you in a trade?
Oh,
Depends on what the trade is.
Seattle at 20 would like to come up 2 spots.
I bet they would for Robinson.
Nope.
And I'm just gonna say this: if I'm Detroit, it all comes down to what they get. So let's just go with this for the sake of the show. Let's say the Lions take that trade.
all right. The Lions get blown away by the Seattle Seahawks, and they're going to swap 18 and 20 and whatever else they figured out. All right, I love this. All right, Seattle, you're on the clock. What do we got?
Paris Johnson Jr. is now a Seattle Seahawk. He was a guy that I was legitimately like as the Seahawks GM, a pseudo GM. I was legitimately looking and considering if the Will Andersons and the Jalen Carters were gone. Peter Skoronski and Paris Johnson Jr. to come in. Seattle builds through the trenches. And watching as the tackles continue to not get picked, and I'm sitting here licking my chops, and tackle goes off the board, and then the moment Darnell Wright got taken at 17, I said, no, we can't risk it. We got to get in front of Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay is probably going to take an offensive tackle. Paris Johnson on some people's boards is, the number 1 tackle in this year's draft class. He's not on my board, but I get why people are in love with this kid. You're going to come in and immediately start competing for that right tackle spot with Lucas, who we drafted in last year's draft, Abraham Lucas in the 3rd round. And whoever wins that job goes to right tackle. Whoever loses that job goes to right guard. And now we're looking at Seattle having one of the best offensive lines to help protect and create as much space for one of the better running backs in Kenneth Walker III, and giving Metcalf and Lockett all the time in the world to go get open.
I like this aggressiveness here by Pete.
Nice.
I think Pete knows he's like 100 years old.
Mhm.
I shouldn't say that. Pete is the oldest coach in the NFL, even though he feels like one of the youngest coaches in the NFL. And if they obviously re-sign Geno, protect Geno, pound the rock, play defense. I think they hit on all their middle to late round defensive picks last year. Why can't they do it again this year? So I absolutely love just shoring up the offensive line. I can address any defensive needs later in this draft. And if your guy's on the board and you're worried about him getting taken, go freaking get him.
Okay. So this is my toughest pick with Tampa Bay, because I'm torn. And they could use a lot of things. Obviously, quarterback's a huge need for them, but I mean, we've already seen 5 go off the board. We are not taking Tanner McKee at pick 19. They could use safety. That's tempting. But maybe it's a little early for, Branch is nice. They could use tight end. They could use defensive interior. They could use edge. Tackle they could use, but all the best ones are off the board. And they took a tackle in the 2nd round last year who struggled, Luke Goodecki. I'm probably butchering the name. And they have Tristan Wirfs. So they might wait to try to get a right tackle maybe on day 2. So I'm kind of really going between defensive interior and edge. And, I think they're going to look at that. And I think Lucas Van Ness, they look at him and, he's young. I know he needs to develop, he's got a fastball, but he needs to develop a slider. He needs a second move, but his bend is elite, right? And what he can do.
Can I interest you in a trade?
What are we offering, my friend?
The Giants are at 25. Looking at the Tampa Bay Bucks at 19, seeing, what? We have the possibility about to see a run on wide receivers after the Detroit Lion news that might be a spot where wide receiver goes. I'm going to pretend like I didn't hear what Dan said at 18, right? The Giants aren't going to know that. The Chargers could use a wide receiver. The Ravens could use a wide receiver. The Vikings could use a wide receiver.
Mhm.
And there's not very many good wide receivers here. And who knows? Maybe the Kansas City Chiefs are calling. Maybe the Cincinnati Bengals are calling. You know, maybe the Chargers are calling and they're saying, you know what? We're not going to wait anymore. 19, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a bad football team and they're going to be bad for quite a bit. Maybe they want to get some more assets. The Giants want to come up from 25 to 19.
So we take the call and we fleece you and we say yes.
Okay. Tampa Bay trading back. I love the action now. Now we're getting spicy, boys. I think that's a good logic for the Giants. I think the Giants are looking to move up in front of these teams that could possibly need a wide receiver. I think Detroit trading back does give them a little feeling of, okay, Detroit's probably not going wide receiver here. Chargers, Vikings, Ravens. I think if they can't get up to 19, look for them to trade with the Vikings at 23 if the receivers are still sitting on the board. Because honestly, do we really know what Baltimore's doing? Maybe, maybe not. We're just the whole Lamar Jackson situation. But all right, you're on the clock, New York. What do we got? We're going wide receiver.
Yes. They came up. They understand that they just massively overpaid for Danny Dimes, gave him one of the worst contracts I've ever seen in my life, right? They understood that the offense ran through, Saquon last year, and he might not show up. And so you got to get somebody to come in there and ignite that wide receiver room. And for me, he is wide receiver 2 on my board. The fact that he's still here blows my mind. You sprint to the podium. You go get Zay Flowers out of Boston College.
Yeah.
He comes into your locker room, and he is easily, if Saquon's not on the team, the best player on your offense, like week 1, and he just gets open. That's just what he does. He just gets open. And for a guy who's that small, he has no problems with press. None at all. He just gets open. He's fast. He's quick. I love this guy. You put him in the slot, and you just let Daniel Dimes eat under Brian Dable, who might be one of the smarter offensive-minded head coaches in the NFL.
I love it. Zay could play anywhere, inside, outside. That's what I love about Zay Flowers there. So yeah, I love the pick there, and he's my wide receiver 2 in this class as well. So
I just punched my table in Baltimore because I was really hoping that I mean Lamar he fits the scheme. I mean, let's be honest, we don't have the best track record drafting wide receivers in Baltimore, but he was definitely the guy I had circled on my board, especially to pair him with OBJ. It could be a handful for teams now, and maybe Lamar actually comes back and play. But now the real winners is Dan here with Detroit, because nobody he was looking to take got moved, and he just got a nice pickup from Seattle to slide back 2 spots. And what are you doing at 20 now?
So before we make this pick, the Lions are going to call the Chargers to make a trade up to get their picks. So the Lions would have back-to-back picks. I believe they're going to take some of what they got from Seattle. They're going to take their second round pick, and they're going to try to trade up to get pick 21 as well to have back-to-back picks. With pick number 20, they're going to take Kalijah Cansey.
Okay. And then let's go trade.
In order to tell me when you're ready.
Chargers and where's Detroit. All right. So Detroit's going to move up to 21
and get Osiris Torrance.
All right.
Ooh, I love it.
Guard out of Florida. Because if they don't do it, he's going to either Baltimore or Minnesota or Jacksonville.
Oh, who did they take?
Torrance.
Osiris Torrance from Florida.
Guard.
The guard, correct.
They're waitlisted. IOL. Jesus.
Right there.
Yep, Osiris Torrance. All right. Okay. The Chargers, I was thinking the Chargers would sit there.
I thought so too. They would stick and pick wide receiver.
Or I could see the Chargers taking Bijan Robinson right there.
Can you
and they
imagine
get
him and Eckler?
Mhm.
And no, they're getting rid of Eckler. It sounds like
where's he going to go? Who's trading for him in that contract?
somebody would. I mean, if you're going to trade for a running back, Austin Eckler is the ideal running back to go get for somebody.
He's been able to talk to 32 teams, and 32 teams have not shown interest.
Yeah, nobody shows any interest in anybody until
Listen,
until draft day shows up. Nobody's interested in anybody. I say, all right, now I'm on the clock. I'm happy now that the wide receivers are here. Um, this is a tough one. I have to go wide receiver here. I'm trying signing OBJ. I'm trying to save this Lamar Jackson relationship. I am trying so hard. I I offer, if they haven't already, offer him the Jalen Hurts contract. If he doesn't accept it, he's got bigger issues because that's more than a fair contract for Lamar Jackson. The way the Jalen Hurts contract is written out, it's got a ton of guaranteed money. In fact, I think the original offer had more guaranteed money if he stayed healthy, which is a big if. But Jordan Addison is a guy I'm very comfortable with taking here. I'm upset that Flowers isn't there, but I think Jordan Addison is a guy I'm comfortable with. I don't have the best track record at wide receivers. I could think about going, trading back here possibly if I do believe the Lamar Jackson relationship is done. I could slide back. I think I would slide back if Lamar's done and would just kind of let our Pro Bowl quarterback Snoop Huntley take the wheel from here on out. But I'm going to go Jordan Addison here. I think he's a good receiver. It is a shame he got hurt at the combine because I think he could have shown off and it hurt his draft stock a little because I was very high on Jordan Addison coming out, but obviously now some concerns there. I think he's a sure-handed wide receiver. He's got good speed. Minnesota's now off of the wide receiver train on top of it. But I got to try and save this. I got to try and save this relationship with Lamar Jackson. It's the only way. He's a franchise level quarterback. Plays this, that, and the other. I got to try and save it. Everyone's getting fired if I don't keep Lamar Jackson. I think that's pretty obvious. Everybody's fired in Baltimore if they got to start fresh. So I have to try and get a wide receiver here. Anybody? Yeah.
No, I love it. You're right. They got to go. They absolutely have to go wide receiver.
Baltimore to me is a team, like, I love how they draft, and I think they're the team that just always sits there and waits and see who everyone else passes on and just takes the guy that people are like, of course that's Baltimore takes him because he's good. So for me, I don't, as much as I do think they want to try to figure out the Lamar thing, I'm not sure that some people would consider Addison a reach, some people wouldn't. I think they're more likely to take a guy you didn't expect to be there, like Van Ness or Murphy.
Yep.
In terms of what Baltimore does, but I totally understand the thought process for wanting to get the weapons.
I think 100%. If Van Ness is still here on the board, I think if you're Baltimore, you're taking him. You have the needed edge. And the problem is I never like it when, like, there are certain football players that shouldn't be listed at a position, right? And Lucas Van Ness is one of those. Putting him in that edge box is a disservice to Lucas Van Ness. What you should say is Lucas Van Ness, football player, Iowa. Like, that should be what it says, because he can play inside, he can play outside. Hell, you could probably drop that guy into coverage if you wanted to. He's that athletic. And so if I was Baltimore, yeah, Jordan Addison is here, but Jordan Addison is a second-round wide receiver, in my opinion. This is a reach, and Baltimore I think they would jump for joy at the ability to get Lucas Van Ness, who is my second best. He's my second edge on my board.
I just think that buries the Lamar relationship at that point. If you don't take him a wide receiver, he's gone.
Well, you paid OBJ $18 million.
He doesn't care. Like, he cares. Like,
I'm just saying, you got your
wide receiver. He wants more, obviously. That was a bad contract on top of it. I agree that, okay, Van Ness is there, and if they take it, but if Lamar's gone, how many games are they winning with Snoop Huntley? Let's be honest. Yeah. In that division, is really good.
I just wonder if, like, they wait to the second round and look for someone like Tillman out of Tennessee, someone like that, because it's an interesting receiver class. It's not top heavy, but there are good players throughout. I don't think he'll be there when they pick in the second round, but someone like that or Tillman, and then go with the Van Ness to kind of replace Calais Campbell, for them on the defensive line. So, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see what
don't
they do.
Have a second round pick. I don't.
Okay.
No, they don't. So they're picking at 86 in the third round. So this is a tough spot for them again, where you don't necessarily have the draft capital.
I wonder if they're trading back because of that. I don't know. and then
Awesome.
take Addison in the.
That would have been interesting because I have a team on my board, and I don't know if you can guess from the colors that's looking at this draft and trying to come up.
Yeah. So I mean, I wonder if they trade back and take Addison early second round and add draft capital, get the guy that you wanted anyway without it being a reach, and then address some other needs.
That's true. I mean,
we couldn't have done that here. I get that.
the only question, no, obviously, but the only question is, do we have a run on wideouts here where you're looking at, okay, I slid back. We do okay with the wide receivers. We do add to the defense. Baltimore is a smart team, so they'll probably do the right decision. But I think they're getting a little rash lately with them. Like the OBJ signing made 0 sense whatsoever.
But that was make Lamar happy, right?
And it really didn't. It sounded like it didn't.
No, it sounded like it did. They were on the phone. They were talking. They were having all these conversations. The problem is Lamar is asking for way too much money, and he hasn't earned it. That's the real problem in it. He's asking for a ridiculous contract, and it's just like at some point in time, he's going to realize no one's interested in paying him that money, and he'll be back in Baltimore.
He's asking for too much guaranteed money. That's what it is.
Yeah. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah.
Okay, Stevie B, you are on the clock with our Minnesota Vikings. What are we doing here?
Yeah, I was thinking about trading with the Eagles and moving the Eagles up, but I'm not going to do that.
Can the Bengals interest you in a trade?
Where are the Bengals?
The Bengals could interest me in a trade. I'll take it.
All right.
Boom.
What are the Bengals?
Because I love what you're about to do, probably.
What do the Bengals have here?
Well,
the Bengals.
The Vikings.
I'll let you guys make the pick. This should be really obvious what they're about to do.
But trading back for the Vikings does make sense. We were talking about this off air before we went started because you don't have a ton of picks. So I think that's something that is absolutely a good possibility. Unless they go all in on trading up for a quarterback, trading back makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think, especially you scoop up 60, get back into the second round, and probably get 131 with it for them, which would help them out. So I absolutely like this. Like I said, the Giants, another team, the Cowboys, possibly anybody in this range.
That's why they're making this trade.
Yeah,
I think the Bengals are coming up to 23 because they're scared that the Jags might be sellers, the Bucks might be sellers, and with the Cowboys and the Bills picking in front of them, we all know who they came up for, right? Do I have to say it?
I don't. Oh, I think I
Dalton Kincaid.
I'm not sure.
No, they came up for Bijan.
Bijan, baby.
Ooh,
oh yeah. Yep.
Oh my.
Absolutely.
You mean having a running? You mean having a running back possibly going to jail?
I'm just like but the real thing is he's not, right? He's been cleared of all charges. But
I think they reopened it.
No, but it's a misdemeanor.
Okay.
So worst case he gets right.
It's the NFL anyway.
Case, it's not
it's the NFL. Everybody's okay anyway. Nobody cares.
But like the way that I look at it is Joe Mixon is about to make $10 million this year. None of his contract is guaranteed, so they can cut him and save $10 million. And Bijan is arguably an upgrade to what Joe Mixon is when you look at his health, cost-controlled contract for the next 5 years. Joe Burrow's about to make $100 million a year because quarterback salaries are ridiculous. Dude, you won off of having 3 insanely good wide receivers and a really good running back. Keep that thing going. Save $10 million. Go pay T. Higgins.
Interesting. I like it, even though I don't like taking running backs in the first round. I mean, for the Bengals, like I said, they're one of those teams that are a contender. So if a contender has most of your roster set, I'm not going to quibble over it in terms of taking a running back, especially this good. So,
and in this year's draft, because they do need a tight end, if you can make that trade without giving up 60, which I think you could do, right? You can make that trade, giving assets in next year's draft where the Vikings don't have a quarterback in next year. You could probably maybe convince them to say, take, their first round pick, their third round pick, their fourth round pick, and keep 60. And none of the tight ends are off the board. So that means at 60, you can still maybe get a guy like, he won't be there, but like Dalton Kincaid, Michael Mayer, Sam Laporta, Darnell Washington, Luke Musgrave, Schoonmaker. There's a lot of guys in this draft that are really good at tight end. You can go and get one of those guys in round 2 and get Bijan in round 1. And I agree. I think this is a bit of an overdraft for Bijan. I don't believe in taking running backs in the first round, but because of the success that Breece Hall last year had going in the second round, teams are going to want that 5th year of control, and I think that matters. Having that 5th year matters to a lot of teams. And so Bengals are in win now mode. The AFC is getting harder and harder and harder. You put a hat on a hat, you put the best player at a position of need, and you move on.
That's a scary offense.
It is.
And it actually, I don't think it got talked about enough that, they did lose Pirine, and they really, they got a lot out of Pirine when he filled in when Mixon went down. So there is a hole there for, even if you want to keep Joe Mixon and kind of run a two-headed monster out there. I mean, offense is scary. The defense is kind of a no-name defense, but it's really good. We've seen it be really, really good. So I love this pick. Jerry Jones just punted his TV screen because that is where I think he wants to go. Like, that is
the Bills. All of Buffalo just committed suicide. They're like, another running back we couldn't get.
Well, I think that makes them go trade for Dalvin Cook now, and they run a Cook backfield in Buffalo for that. All right, so unfortunately, Cook is for sale. They save about $6 million, I think, trading him or cutting him, and Miami's interested. Someone's got to pick up that contract, though. It's a little hefty, especially for a running back, but they're selling him. They re-signed Madison as backup, and I think they want to run Madison as the lead back. Unfortunately, Dan had to go. We ran a little over, as these things tend to do. So does anybody want to fill in for the Jags?
I will, unless someone else really wants to. I mean, I just think for the Jaguars, so many people have mocked Brian Branch as a really good fit for them, for their defense. So to me, that just seems like kind of a no-brainer. Any thoughts on that from anyone else?
I heard Brian Branch has already bought a condo in Jacksonville.
Yeah, right. You co-sign on that one, huh?
Yes, I love that pick. I think they're ecstatic Brian Branch has fallen to them at this spot. And
I live here in Florida, and that's all I hear is Brian Branch. Brian Branch is a Jag. Brian Branch is a Jag. Brian Branch is a Jag.
And they're now like they run away with this division now. Let's be honest. I mean, good God, they're probably, with how bad the division is, gonna be trying to get that bye. And I know it's not scary to go play in Jacksonville in the wintertime. It's actually a nice relief. But home games are home games, especially for young teams like the Jags. So good on Doug Peterson. I like this pick. All right, who's on the clock now? Tampa.
Oh, it's me again. I've got
chosen back-to-back Tampa. Oh, you got 3 in a row.
Okay.
I love it.
Jason Light is having a cocktail right now because the guy he was going to take before he traded back with our good friend Tigo here is still on the board, right? We were going to take Lucas Van Ness. He's still there. Lucas Van Ness, welcome to Tampa Bay.
I think this is a great pick. He fell. He's a high, sometimes he could go. Ness feels like a guy that could go very high, or I could absolutely see him sliding. He did have some injury issues, and I don't trust guys from Iowa. Let's be honest. They're kind of slow, unathletic white guys in the Big Ten. I don't trust them. They don't pan out well.
Slow.
He tested very well. I was very surprised with how well he tested, honestly. But it's just
a perspective. If the Jets didn't need an offensive tackle, like in my eyes, this desperately, if Lucas Van Ness was there at 13, he was my pick. I love Lucas Van Ness that much.
If the Jets add any more to that defense, that would be a problem.
Yeah, dude, you turn a superpower into a super duper power, right? Like, that's what you do. That's how you win games, is by doing what you do great even better. We didn't need Sauce at 4 last year. Well, you take the defensive rookie of the year and you laugh at the Houston Texans for taking DSJ.
That was a sussy pick. All right, Jerry Jones, how have you recovered from your Bijan? I mean, he had everything made up. He had the signs, he had the jerseys, he had the endorsements, and now he's shit out of luck.
Jerry Jones just fired 12 people for not getting in front of that one. But there's a couple directions he could go. But I think the fact that they lost Dalton Schultz and their best tight end is the 4th rounder, who was, graded reasonably well, but I think they like having a good tight end in Dallas. They've had a long history of really good tight ends, Jay Novacek, Witten, and I think they're pretty. As much as they're disappointed about Bijan being gone, I think they go with Michael Mayer, who I think many people see as the best tight end, even if PFF has him graded as the second best. So I think they go Michael Mayer as their tight end and give Prescott another weapon on that offense.
Great pick.
Yeah,
I
I
love
love
it.
this.
I love it.
I love this pick. Get Dak loves throwing to tight ends. Dak
Yeah.
loves
Yep.
throwing to tight ends.
And
Get
I have
him a
Michael
tight end.
Mayer as my number one tight end in this class too. Like
Mhm.
like heads and shoulders like over Kincaid in my opinion. He's in a tier on his own. And that's not trying to take anything away from Kincaid, but I just I think Michael Mayer is baby Kittle. Like that's the projection that I see for him. A mauler in the run game, a passing threat, and if you can help him get a stronger lower half so that he can maybe gain just a half a yard of speed, watch out because we're looking at one of the better tight ends in football in my opinion.
I was gonna say he did struggle a bit in the combine with just felt very mid. It felt very mid when I was all over him. Obviously, everybody was all over him coming into the combine that he was by far the number one tight end. And maybe Kincaid benefited from not having to do anything as part of that. So I love this pick. I don't have a problem with any of the go with it, whatever tight end. All right, Dan's last pick, I believe here, the Buffalo Bills. We can group this one. What are we doing in Buffalo?
So I know a lot of
Is
people
it
think
time
they go
to give
running.
up on the Brown experiment with Anton Harrison here? Sorry, Joseph.
No,
Is
that's
it
right.
time to give up on the Brown experiment? Is it time to maybe protect your franchise quarterback?
They did maybe, yes, but Buffalo doesn't play like that for some reason. They like their quarterback running around and getting
Not
killed.
anymore.
They
They had 3 different press conferences where the GM, the head coach, and the quarterback both said, "I got to stop being a guy who runs around so much."
they say that until they're not winning football games and they have no discernible actual run game that they get on track. I mean, I liked
It's hard to win football games when Brown is the 73rd ranked tackle in PFF. It's hard when you're getting rushed from the right side. That's my take. I think maybe the Brown experiment ends and you go and get Anton Harrison. That's my bet.
I could see that. I mean, a lot of people think they go running back, but I think what's weird is that even though they don't have a great running back, I don't feel like they build their offense around having a good running back. Josh Allen does a lot of their running. As you look at their roster, they definitely need some help at tackle. They could use some help. You know what though? Let me throw another thing in there because I think this is a great spot for one of my favorites. He is John Michael. He's our center Schmitz, as I call him. How's that for like Mitch Morse is kind of older, and I know they could use tackle, but there's some tackles you might be able to get. Like you need a right tackle. You can get a guy like Carter Warren or Tyler Steen or maybe Matthew Bergeron. He might be gone early second round. So there are some right tackles you get later. But what about that center? A lot of people think John Michael Schmitz to Buffalo is a possibility.
I love John Michael Schmitz. He's my favorite center in this class. But here's where I think we disagree is I don't think you get a right tackle in the second round. After Anton Harrison and DeJuan Jones are gone, all of these guys, in my opinion, are question marks. They're big question marks. I don't know if Tyler Steen is ready to start. I don't know if I have Matthew Bergeron projected as a guard at the next level. There's a lot of these things where you look at and here's the thing. It's not like they don't have a needed guard either. Is Bates really the answer? Is McGovern and this is the Texas, like the Dallas McGovern, is he really an upgrade at that guard? Like they have a lot of holes on that offensive line. They could go a million different directions. John Michael Schmitz. They could go Steve Avila if they want a guard. They could go Anton Harrison. Hell, they could go DeJuan Jones here. I wouldn't be upset with it. I will throw this out there as well. I see this mocked a lot with Bijan being gone here. And again, I know me and Joseph don't super agree with this pick, but there's a lot of people really, really high on Jahmyr Gibbs, the running back, and they're a desperate need for running back here.
First of all, I agree. Schmidt's best center. I refuse to take centers in the first round. I think it's a stupid move to take centers in the first round. You could probably get them in this. I've seen way too many centers get drafted in the second, third, and fourth round, be the best center in football, be all pro level players. And I've seen a few centers drafted high in the first round turn into duds, especially on my football team. Hint, hint, hint. I like protecting Allen here. The
Yeah.
defense is a concern, though. They lost a lot in free agency on the defense side of the ball, and they weren't very good. Let's be honest. They got cooked by that Bengals offense. So I just don't know how high they would be on Joey Porter Jr. at corner or, any of the pass rush. The linebackers obviously would be kind of a reach here.
Do we know
Jameer-
anything about Kaiir Elam? They took him in the first round last year, and he's not even slated to be a starter for them. Are they out on him? Are they considering him a project? What's happening there? Do we know?
I have no idea what they're doing with
They
him.
took him in the first round out of Florida last year. I really liked Kaiir
And
Elam. I was disappointed that he went to Buffalo.
So did I. I would have to ask my Bill friends because
I mean, yeah, he graded 64.6 per PFF, played 570 snaps. So he played a bit. He looks like he played most of the season, maybe missed a couple games. So I'm not sure what's going on with him.
yeah, this
I'm
is
just putting it out there because they still have Tre'Davious White, right? You spent a first round pick on Kaiir Elam, and I don't know. I'm just curious.
I mean, he looked like he got a little bit better down the stretch, and looks like he played more snaps late in the season. So I don't think they're out on him, at least from what the data are showing. I will say like tackle's an interesting one and I totally hear this about center in the first round. Like I wouldn't take center in the first round either. I'm a big believer in kind of positional value. I bring up Schmitz though because he's been discussed as linked to them, but I think there are a couple tackles. Harrison, still being on the board, that's worth looking at. And cornerbacks. I mean, only 3 cornerbacks gone so far. I don't know how they feel about Porter, but I could definitely see them going just because the value is so good that the 4th best corner is still on the board. You usually expect that to be gone.
Miles Murphy here. Von Miller's not getting any younger either.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I was.
They could go a ton of different directions. I would go Anton Harrison here, though, if I was the Bills. If I was making this pick, I would make that pick.
I mean, I wouldn't be angry about Harrison, Murphy, Porter, or
I think Gibbs is the only pick that would be like, you're kind of reaching a bit here, Buffalo, on that. But hey, maybe Joe Mixon, like you said, Cincinnati, they cut Joe Mixon. Maybe you pick up Joe Mixon on the cheap and he comes to Buffalo. There's options at running back here. I think we go tackle here just to make things a little bit better for Josh Allen's life. We got to kind of protect him. All right, Vikings, you've traded back, and there are people on the board for you.
Yeah, defense sucks. Let's go Joey Porter Jr.
All right, I like that.
Quick, simple. I love it.
Punch the pick in. Yeah,
We're just that bad. We need it. I mean, it's bad. It's for the last 2 years. I mean, how many times are we going to lose in the last seconds of a game, or when it gets down to the stretch because we can't make a stop? I mean, Kirk Cousins brings us back, and then we can't make a stop. So I'm done.
Well, we signed 2 corners and we lost 5, so that tells you all you need to know about the cornerback position on the team. But hey, maybe the draft picks that they drafted last year will play, even though one had 2 concussions and the other has never been healthy since high school. Never played a full season, so maybe they're banking on that. But I think if one of the top corners are there, they go corner here. But in Flores, we trust. All right, Saints on the clock. Daniel, you got the Saints. What are we doing here?
So, one of my good friends is a diehard Saints fan, and one of his biggest complaints is the interior offensive line, especially the center position. Let's see. I'm gonna go with what's his name? I'm gonna go with Steve Avilov out of TSU. I know he's well. You know what? No, I'm gonna go with Joe Tipman, center. He's actual center. he's going to be the guy that I'm selecting here for the New Orleans Saints. They've had some issues with their center position. They've moved a couple of guys around. I'm going to go with Joe Tippmann.
This makes sense. Obviously, it's how you grade the centers out. You sign Derek Carr, protect him, and they have no running game whatsoever, so they kind of need some sort of thing. And I trust Big Ten offensive linemen, Wisconsin road graders, Minnesota road graders. So I'm okay with either center here. I have Schmitz a little bit higher, but obviously centers, whatever. They're hard. It's hard to project centers at this spot. All right,
I think Steve
Oh,
Avila at this point. I'm sorry, real quick.
Oh,
I
go
thought
ahead.
when you said Steve Avila, I was totally on board. I think Steve Avila is exactly what New Orleans is looking for. And I think that if he's still here, I think that's the pick that they make. But I do love me some Joe Tippmann, and I think he also has that ability to bump out and play guard if they need him to do that.
So I would just say Joe Tippmann is like the best pulling guard, and he's really good for an outside wide zone, which is actually what the Cardinals are looking to do. I'm wondering if if you're going as center for New Orleans, and I don't know a lot about exactly what they're running scheme wise, but I look at their
Power
centers.
gap.
They got, more of a power gap. Yeah, I've kind of figured when you look at the 6'4", 303, 6'4", 316. So I think with their offense, if they are kind of that inside zone or power run, maybe John Michael Schmitz is a better fit, or the guy from TCU, Avila, is interesting because he played center and then switched to guard, and what's interesting about him is you could play him at center or guard. If he doesn't work at one, or if you need him to move, you could, and he's probably a better fit for that. So they're all good players, but I think, and I know none of us follow all 32 teams well enough to know all their schemes, but I'm guessing that maybe some of the other guys we're talking about might be a better scheme fit than Tippmann, but yeah.
I actually think this is a great spot for New Orleans to trade back with their needs. They could slide early second round, and we have Dalton Kincaid sitting here. If people are high on a tight end that need a offensive weapon, teams at the top of the draft need offensive weapons. I'm thinking, anybody could be moving up here, and there's we just listed 3 guys that are probably not going anywhere here soon that they could slide back to day 2 with and pick up picks. I mean, they're happy to just be in the first round, though. Maybe I know they were happy that they got.
We're
this
just
pick.
happy to be here.
They're happy to be here to get this pick back. I know that's so. Maybe
they got invited.
It was. I think did Jordan tweet that he was like, "Oh, we got a first round pick again." I think they kind of bet the house in a weird way for absolutely no reason last year, and it totally collapsed on them. So. Yeah, I would try and maybe trade back and get more picks here, but let's go with the Eagles. Another pick where they're supposed to be picking at number 30. We forgot to mention the Dolphins forfeited pick when we passed it, right. But sorry, Miami.
I'm not.
Yeah,
go talk to Tom Brady. He's going to help save the franchise.
Yeah, Bill Belichick accidentally texted the wrong Brian. Sure, Bill. Sure. He knew what he was doing. All right, what do you got, Stevie?
We got the Eagles up. This one's a tough one. I don't really know who to go. We went with Smith, I think, Nolan Smith, right, earlier. Do we go with, is it Breesy? Did I say that right? How do you say it? Breesy?
Breesy, I believe.
Bressy? Do we go Breesy? Do we go Bressy? Do we go,
Jack
corner
Campbell.
like Ringo? Do we...
More slow linebacker.
Do we take Gibbs? Do we go Gibbs here? We got our defense. So I'm gonna take Gibbs.
I love it.
We're gonna go Gibbs. We need a running back. We can't trust Penny. He's good for about 4 games, maybe. So yeah, give me Gibbs.
I like this pick a lot, actually. That's a good move here for the Eagles. Wow.
The only other thing I would say is I wonder if they look at Miles Murphy still being there.
That's true too.
To shore up their deep. But I mean, Gibbs that running back is something they certainly need. So don't hate the pick, but yeah.
It would be
since we
interesting
went
if
Smith,
they
I
double
don't know
dipped
if
on
I should
edge.
go.
Yeah.
What is that?
They went Nolan Smith at 10, right?
Yeah, we went
Yeah.
Nolan Smith earlier, so I figured, you know what? Fuck it. If
Mm.
we missed out on Bijan, let me just go after the running back now since we made the the pick earlier.
I
Mhm.
thought I would have thought in this position you like overdraft a linebacker a little bit, have the 5th-year option, go get Jack Campbell out of Iowa. Like you lost both
Good
of your
idea.
starting linebackers, but this
Right.
is the much sexier. Oh yeah, look at we're gonna go win a Super Bowl pick.
Yeah,
I love
exactly.
it. Like Jack Campbell or a pick like that, or like Brian Bressy's like the yeah we're going in the trenches, or
Mhm.
like taking Steve Avila here to play guard or whatever because they lost Mailata to the Steelers. But like, nah, screw it. We run the ball really well. Running
That's
back.
That's
I
it.
love it.
I love this too, especially if they go Nolan Smith first round. Like, I mean, Howie tends to make splashes. Like Howie does really good splashy things. Again, if they trust it, could they slide back? Possibly another team to pick up more picks because he also likes sliding back a little bit. And this is all, it's honestly all luxury at this point for the Eagles. It feels like there's very few holes on this team. Um, and you're just going for it. I like the go for the kill Super Bowl pick right here. I do really like that
Well,
aggressiveness.
I think the Chiefs could like Gibbs too. I mean, I don't know.
I
Replace McKinnon. He's basically McKinnon and Pacheco like all in one. I don't know.
So
I
who is 31?
I do. I
All right,
have
Peter. I know I don't have this team since no
You
one
want
has
him-
any other teams, but the Chiefs, there's no one here that I think that the Chiefs might be in love with. And there might be a team that I'm thinking of in the back of my head who I actually didn't pick with, who might want to come up to 31 to get the 5th-year option on a player that they're in love with. How interested would you be in trading with the Houston Texans?
at where are they 33? Yes, for 2 picks. I think
they give you 104 to move up 2 spots.
I
5th-year option.
I think this is good. So this is actually fun. I was doing a lot of digging on the Chiefs. One of my best friends is a diehard Chiefs fan, like diehard Chiefs fan. And I was talking to him and I was like, what are the Chiefs? He's like, they don't know. Like Kansas City does not know what they're doing. It's
I know exactly what they're doing in the draft. I can tell you.
it's hard to either trading back with the Texans.
No, they're going up to. I can guarantee this. They're going to the Commanders pick and they're taking Zay Flowers.
They're going wide
Right-
receiver.
Oh, I've
right-
heard
put that
about
in
that
stone
because he had a
right
workout.
now.
He had a workout with Mahomes, and
With
Mahomes
Mahomes.
loved him.
That's
Yes,
right.
Yep.
they were throwing together. That's where I think they were going to go wide receiver, possibly tackle. We saw the tackle slide a little bit. If Harrison's there, I think they take Harrison.
I would even take DeJuan Jones here. Honestly, I like DeJuan Jones. right now.
Possibly. I'm not. This is way too high for Downs or Dell.
Yep.
I think so. So I actually am going to trade back. I have the Texans technically, and I will trade back because I think you're absolutely right. I don't think anybody on the board screams Chiefs here. And it's a tough spot. If they move up to 16, that's gonna cost a lot though. But if they do and go get Zay,
just won a Super Bowl.
this is true. If you go get Zay Flowers, yeah, you won, and they need wide receiver help. So, all right, now I'm back on the clock. Who do you want us to go get the 5th-year option on?
Remind us what Houston did
So
in the first 2 picks.
What did we do? We went quarterback and wide receiver.
We went Bryce Young and then Quentin
And
Johnson.
Quentin Johnson.
And I'm pounding. I'm keeping it going, protecting. This is the pick that I think that they would make. And the team that scares me in this situation is ironically Daniel's Pittsburgh Steelers here. Because I know that they moved up, but if they kept 33 in this situation, they could theoretically be eyeing a center. And the biggest area of need for the Houston Texans is center. And John Michael Schmitz is a perfect fit for the Houston Texans. And having the 5th-year option on a guy, partnering him up with your young quarterback so that he can call protections and help your guy who's going to be taking 30-step drops so that he can look over the offensive line makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and I think the Chiefs are also a little less interested in that 5th-year option, obviously, because they're not so. They're kind of in the short term, and everything's play it by ear with Mahomes at this point. Like, Andy Reid's going to retire here in a minute, and Matt Nagy. Who the hell knows what Matt Nagy? I'm assuming Matt Nagy's going to take over this job in Kansas City. So if they win another Super Bowl next year, I think Andy Reid's gone. Now, then again, it's a lot easier said than done to leave Patrick Mahomes when you keep winning. So I do think that the Chiefs slide. If they don't go up, I did not hear that they were looking to go up, but I did hear he loves Zay Flowers. So I like that move there.
So I just want to pitch something. I put this in the chat for y'all. I do a weekly mock draft Monday, or I have been up until this point, and I did a video, like it's 18 seconds of John Michael Heiser Center Schmitz to John Jacob Jingle. It's so anyway, it's actually me singing. It's fun. And it's so anyway, if you want to, if you're watching this later, you want to see that, go to the Cardinal Rule YouTube channel, and I've got it on my channel, John Michael Heiser Center Schmitz. Anyway,
I'll pull it up. I pulled it up. I pulled it
okay.
up. I'm gonna play this for us. Here we go.
All right, it's fun.
John Michael Heiser Center Schmitz. His name's on my draft too. No matter what they say,
Everyone who's watching is like,
you say okay. It's got John Michael Heiser Center Schmitz.
Well, he's pulling that up. I will say this: at 32, the Steelers probably would have picked DeJuan Jones tackle at that part. You know,
Oh,
they've
that
been
makes
eyeing
sense, too.
tackles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And with Andy Weidel, you know, he's brought in a lot of large people, and especially up front in the trenches. And so I think that's going to be the move for the first pick in the second round.
I think that's good. I played that for the stream, so everybody on stream got to enjoy that beautiful vocalization there.
Hey, I want to say hey to Lance S, who's in the chat, saying he's here for showing his wonderful singing voice. So thanks for dropping by, Lance. He's a subscriber to my channel. So
Yes, I appreciate it. We had actually a great chat. It looked like chat, and I had too many screens open. I couldn't be typing in the chat. Try to run all this stuff for everybody, but yeah, I think that's gonna do it for us, guys. First of all, fantastic job. Absolutely a blast with everybody. It was so much fun. So yeah, I appreciate everybody for doing this, sacrificing your Friday night to grind it out. I know I think we said like an hour and a half, and we're well over that now, but we lost Dan in the process, but it's okay. We covered for them. Everyone had a blast. If everybody wants to pitch their channel, I posted a link in the description of my stream if everybody wants to check it out. So go ahead. Let's just go down in order from the top here. So
Joseph Camo, the Cardinal Rule on YouTube. Check me out for fun songs about John Michael Schmitz and all things Arizona Cardinals.
All right, Daniel.
Yeah, Daniel with State of the Steelers. Catch me there. Also on Steel Curtain Network if you're interested in Steelers news and coverage.
Yeah, Stevie B, Dynasty Life Fantasy Football. Also have a show on 420 Hustler, Fantasy Hustler Network as well. So you can find me there also.
And wrapping it up, our Jet expert Tigo.
Yeah, talking Jets with Tigo. Like I said earlier, we talk Jets, we talk football, and especially during the draft. I've been pumping out so much draft content. So if you're interested in learning about any of the top 5 guys at the positions or whatever, we're pumping out daily. We did centers today. We're doing guards tomorrow. We're doing tackles the day after. Then we're going to the defensive side of the ball. It's a blast. I love it. I've evaluated, I think, this draft season. I think I'm at like 308 or 309 guys that I have a little write-up on and all that stuff. So I love the draft. It's my favorite time of the year.
Yeah, I've been watching those. I actually really enjoy those little ones. There. I am After the Review Sports. Thank you for everybody stopping by. We do kind of cover everything during the NFL season, live stream Monday Night Footballs, but covering news every day, do shorts every day. So lots of fun stuff. I appreciate everybody for stopping by. It was an absolute blast. Hopefully we can do more stuff in the future. I know how hard it is to get so many people, but maybe just one-on-one individual stuff. Draft next Thursday, everybody. Should be a lot of blast. So thanks for stopping by. And that's going to do it for us.